know, but she's the administrator right now, and she knows that I told her she's trying to go over here, so she act like she didn't know who was going to work with us. And she kept getting confused. And she kept saying, well, that's this packet from Bruce. I said, no, this came from Dave. She knows it's Dave, and she's been working in the office for a minute.
You know if Cheryl got a ride to the airport?
Well, actually, oh yeah, she ended up, she's gonna be kind of late, so she ended up, I was gonna pick her up, but she had to switch out. Spirit 11, I think, isn't that right? 11?
That's what I heard about 11:30, yeah.
No. This thing, where does it plug in?
Right? So this thing's been formed 6.
Yep.
So you guys have enough.
He's the kind of guy who,
Yep, we're set.
you know,
Is there a sound system today?
everything is.
Yes, I asked about it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I love it. He
Okay.
just keeps working.
All right. Well,
Unless
it's
somebody
pretty
wants
good
to set it up. We no longer have John. John is.
Right.
And we're going to depend on Jim to help set it up. The sound system, we have it, but,
Can y'all hear?
Yeah.
How about me? I've got the worst.
That's the AV. Remote monitor. I can hear you. And this is where I put the,
Okay, well, we're ready to start.
that's not, oh wait a minute,
Yes.
it's this here.
Yeah.
Not it.
hey, I'm just staying my meeting.
The power thing goes to here, this goes to here.
The right power thing?
Well, meeting of the Advisory Committee on Medical Marijuana, a regular meeting for March 11th, 2013. We're going to start with introductions, starting from Alan down there.
I'm Alan Cohn, physician from Eugene.
I'm Sandy Burbank from Mosier. I'm the executive director of Mothers Against Misuse and Abuse.
Alice Ivany, patient advocate.
Jim Clark, patient, grower, caregiver, patient advocate.
Todd Bellato, ACMM chair, also chair of the Horticulture's Research and Safety Committee.
Ben Matt. I guess I need to do a long list. Okay, I'm a grower, a patient, caregiver, a realtor, a father. Yeah, that'll be good.
Larry Funk, Williams, Oregon, patient and grower.
And in excused absences is Dr. Lehrberger. And
Stormy should be on her way.
Is
Yep.
Brian going to be here?
And I don't know about Brian, but Cheryl is excused lateness. She'll be here at about 11:30.
Would it be better if we moved that way? Doesn't matter. Okay. Thank you.
All right, so if the staff and managers want to introduce themselves.
I'm Ronnie Carroll, law enforcement liaison for the OMMP.
I'm Jennifer Alcaraz, I'm a law enforcement liaison for the Organized Marijuana Program.
Tawana Nichols, the section manager for the medical marijuana program.
I'm Aaron Hassel, I'm a program analyst with the Organized Marijuana Program.
And if the audience would like to introduce themselves too, or you can pass if you don't want to introduce yourself.
Working the camera on the staff.
Sarah Bennett, look like the patient advocate.
Keith Cancer, working Cannabis Connection Public Good
Jean Biggers Adams, patient. Marcia Stevens, patient.
Clay Christensen, Oregon Chronic Solutions for Access Point, patient advocate, caregiver, grower, patient.
Okay, I'm with Tyler Crone, I'm a patient and I work with Sandy and Mom.
Peke from MTV, patient, grower, advocate. Your turn.
You remember your name? Barry.
Beg pardon?
You know your name?
My name? And welcome to it. I'm Perry Stripling. I'm here representing the world.
Yay. The world? How much of the world?
We're going to aim at big.
As in all of it?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
Visit mercycenters.org for more.
so our next order of business is approving the minutes from December 5th, our last regular meeting. Sandy.
On page 2, underneath guest speaker, in the 1, 2, 3, 4th line down, at the end of the line, it says where growers have become so ramped, and I think the word is rampant. Anybody see it? Okay. And then the next, second to the last line at the same end of that is in DTO. What does DTO mean?
Drug trafficking operation?
Oh, how would I have ever guessed?
Okay.
That's a good guess.
That's a good guess, but
They still should be written out.
yeah, I think someone asked clarification of that during the meeting, so it's taped somewhere.
Okay.
Any other changes? I think there were a few by email early on. I guess those are in this draft.
That was it from me.
Just an aside, I observed the meeting through Mercy TV last time, so I was actually present in that sense. And it was a good way to observe the meeting. I mean, I heard what was going on, and I even made a comment that Perry or somebody passed along to the meeting. And I would encourage the use of the audio-video technology to involve more people across the state.
I concur.
On page 3, up at the top, at the end of Mrs. Marshall's talk, she said something to me that's really hit home with me, that isn't in this.
Okay.
She said, we were all talking about patients not having access, and at the end of this report, she said something that was to the effect, and you could listen to the tape, she didn't understand why patient access was such a problem when we had so many, she said how many, I think it was 170 dispensaries in Oregon. And I think that was really telling, that she did not know that people who want to be legal would not want to have to rely on that. I think it's really important to include that comment in the minutes.
It is important. Letting you go
It
without
blew me
it.
away. I was really surprised she said something like
They're
that.
not legal.
They're
So
not
why would she present them as a reliable source?
Yeah,
Is that something that will be able to get?
it would be right near the end of her presentation in the tape, yes.
Okay.
Make them legal.
Any more changes to the minutes? Okay. So, make a motion to approve.
I move the minutes be approved.
All in favor of approving the minutes with the changes?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Minutes accepted. Okay. And we acknowledge that Stormy Ray is part of the meeting now. Welcome, Stormy.
Nice tournament.
Would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Hi, I'm Stormy Ray over here in the corner. I'm from Eastern Oregon, and I was delighted to get to come to this last meeting. I think I am retiring this time after 8 years, and this is a fantastic board in developing. I have great hopes for you guys, and I'll be watching on the outside.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move swiftly to the OMMP program updates, uninterrupted administrative reports.
As far as personnel, we are currently have 24 permanent employees and 2 temp employees. We're recruiting for 4 positions. We We have not, again, started recruiting for the fill the office manager position because we're looking to restructure OMMP to have higher level managers in those positions. So we're reclassifying that at the time, and hopefully we'll be able to recruit soon. They still haven't talked about giving me another interim manager to assist. And I'm also looking at getting an assistant for myself, for the section manager. And Aaron, talk about statistics.
All right, so these are the statistics from Friday. We were at 53,353 patients. There are 26,834 unique caregivers, meaning we're not counting the same person who may be caregiving for one person twice. There are 40,409 unique growers. And the number of applications we've gotten or a patient lists him or herself as a grower is 26,914, and the number of registrations where the patient listed someone other than him or herself is 27,629. There are currently 1,512 physicians that have a current patient on the program. And you can see the out-of-state participant numbers are 792 patients, 310 caregivers, and 323 growers. There's an out-of-state mailing address.
So the budget, and Dave Leland, who is the interim administrator, will be here probably around the same time that Bruce arrives. They both will be attending, and he will talk a little bit more about the budget. And if you guys have questions around the budget, then during that time you can raise them in. And so there is the budget for our program is in your handouts. And currently our cash balance is at a little bit over 2.8 million, and the biennium revenue 12.4 million, and the amount that has been transferred to support the other programs that were mandated by the Ways and Means Committee is a little over 500,000. So, and it's on schedule. There's not any been transferred extra in there, and by the time the end of the the amount that was mandated.
I'm confused about the last thing you talked about.
It's
What,
on
this
schedule.
5, you said 500 and
No.
then you lost me.
I said 5 million.
You said both.
Yeah, 5 million, I'm sorry, it's 5 million, a little over 5 million.
That's in there now?
That has been transferred to the other programs.
Thank you.
It's on schedule. We still have 5 more months left, and it will come out to be the amount that we were mandated to transfer.
Questions for Sandy Group?
Okay. Anything else about the budget?
So David Leland will be here to talk about the budget, meaning he'll be here to answer questions
Yes.
about this. So I don't want to take any time away from our short time.
If there's something I can answer right now, I'll be glad to. He has put it as a part of his presentation, and he will speak to it.
Okay. Yeah, because one very important thing was I was assured that that the program analyst, will be here to answer questions about this.
The program support manager is Jeff Paulson. He's not planning on attending.
Okay, yeah, because I was assured by David Leland that
Okay,
he would
you
be
can clarify
here.
that with him, because I wasn't part of that conversation.
Okay, and that he was also going to be here to discuss the potential for a fee reduction and look where those numbers are.
Right, and so he has a part of the position, he will be here to talk about that.
And we'll,
Can we ask questions?
yes.
I've noticed that the physician confirmation sheets that are sent no longer contain a stamped, addressed envelope. Was that a conscious decision of the program?
Yeah, we're always looking for ways to cut costs. A lot of the medical clinics weren't using them. We can certainly try to, we They're sent, we've got a whole different system of mailing and trying to streamline things, but if that's something that you want to continue, we'll see what we can do. Most of the doctors, we made the decision to stop sending them out, but if obviously if it's not working for you or a specific clinic, then we'll look into how we can make sure, maybe we'll just send you a number of them to have. The return envelopes.
Oh, yeah.
So,
They're costly, they have them made and then they weren't being used. So we looked at the cost associated, whether or not should we continue to send them.
so probably we won't be sending them individually with each letter, but we'll find a way to get you a number of them so that whenever you get a letter, you can just return them. Would that work?
On the financial report, do you know when we can expect to start getting the projections, the projected revenue and expenses reported? Because we haven't had any projections.
Right,
since,
because
Chris.
if you can see, it's difficult to try to project based on, we're not consistent with the administration. So it's like, it's giving information that is not, that will not benefit, because if you look at the growth, it changes, right? So, and it doesn't have anything, is not consistent even looking at the previous years. I can ask Jeff whether or not he can give us a projection, because when we look back, we were trying to project. But if you see July 2012, how we were like at 900,000, and now we went all the way back down to 300,000 in January. And if you look at the previous year, that 1 month is like really escalated. So, but we have leveled off also. So we're not like having that real large growth. And we couldn't really look at the years before that because the fees were different. So,
Right. Yeah, I mean, I understand how the revenue has been hard to predict.
What is the benefit for you to see the projection?
Well, it's just our responsibility to provide advice on the administrative aspects of the program. So, being able to predict the revenue and expenses,
it's kind of hard because the way our program is, it's like, and plus sometimes people they don't apply at the same time in the year, so it can go way down or it may be way up. And if you can see that, it would be consistent. We can take the average and go across, but that may be way off scaled as well.
Right, but the expenses are probably a lot easier to forecast, and I understand the difficulty with, I've studied statistics and everything, and that's one thing that Chris Grorud was very good at. He analyzed it and he reported it every quarter, and he described the uncertainties and asked us for input about to try to explain why things go up and down. But even with difficult up and down numbers that we've had, that's what people like Chris Grorud and Jeff Carlson are trained at doing, is giving people some sort of picture of the forecast, and that's very useful for us to provide the program with informed advice. Sandy.
And bring that question with Dave as well, because Jeff reports to Dave. So.
I think traditionally registration has always been down during the winter. I know we're way down in December, even November, December, January, and things are picking up, and that's been going on for 9 years for us.
Right.
That does seem to be our slowest.
Yeah. People want to get signed up when it's time to plant and harvest. Yeah, there's no money.
Okay, Ben?
Not to belabor it, but just, of all the business, I've done several businesses in my life, and they always have a budget versus actual, and even the most rudimentary QuickBooks program has a way to compare the two and actually show month over month, and then show an average annualized. You can show a month over month annualized, you can show comparisons. It's very automated now and fairly rudimentary.
And also acknowledging Brian Michaels is now with us in the meeting. Welcome, Brian. Hello. I also noticed that the email notification subscription seemed it works for me. I got a notice. So, is anybody else subscribed on the line to receive notices from the ACMM? Have you? Has it worked for you?
I'm here.
Good, good. All right, so we can see the value in it. So I encourage everybody to subscribe, at least for, for checking to see if it works. So thank you for finally making that happen. Yeah.
Great.
Good. And I haven't tested the email system lately, too, but I have been getting emails through the ohd.acmm at state. Well, I was always getting it spotty, but I don't know what I'm missing, if I'm missing anything, but it seems to be working. Can I ask you, how does exactly the ACMM advice make its way to Dr. Goldberg?
Through me, and then I communicate to the administrator, and then they communicate with Mel, and then Dr. Goldberg either delegated to Mel to address, or he addressed. So so you guys tell me, like always, I take this back, I send the information and share it with the administrator.
Excuse me. Does that go straight to them? There wasn't somebody kind of in between who took Dr. Higginson's place, like Gail?
Well, Gail is the administrator, so they leave us the interim administrator. So as I said, it comes to me, then it goes to administrator, so it would go to Gail.
So when things didn't seem to be getting through, something has been happening that seems.
And whether or not the director, who is Mel Cohn, is the director of Public Health Division, he communicates from the administrator to them, and he communicates to Dr. Goldberg. And if Dr. Goldberg delegates to him, then he's the one that will be responding. Or he delegates it to his deputy director, who was Jean O'Connor, who now she's moving on. So we have an interim administrator there. So there's been a lot of change with the the higher management level. Like our deputy director's been there a year and a half, and now she's leaving. And so we have an interim there, and then I have an interim administrator, because when Grant left, we hired on Jody Noon, who was the permanent, but before Jody, we had an interim who was Barry Cass, until we filled that vacancy. And she decided to move on, and in the meantime, we had the deputy director, who's Jean O'Connor, as the interim administrator, while they went through this reconfiguration, and we got assigned under Gail's office. And Gail's gone, and I have another interim. And I know it's kind of confusing, because you guys are obviously reporting to the director and whoever his delegate is, and then it's been interim.
Yeah. Pretty hard on you guys, thank God.
It's very hard on me.
So in essence, soon after following this meeting, you'll take the things that
I take all these motions, we do, first we get it written up, and then I take it and share the meeting minutes with them, or I have my one-on-one and we talk about these things, and then they just take it and I don't know which way they form it, whether it's email or direct communication.
So the administrator formulates it into a communication, like a memo?
Probably so. I give my information to them by taking this up, taking the meeting minutes, and then I highlight the points that you guys asked for there, and I communicate that to them. Whether it's direct when I have my update with them, or if it's by email.
Yeah, I'm just asking because it's a,
No, that's
it's
fair.
it's curious, it's a mystery more than curiosity, but,
Yeah.
and.
And everything should come from you to the program, as far as like sending me the message, and then I communicate that on to them.
So if we wanted a memo or a copy of that communication, would we take that up with the administrator then, or?
It would be a public records request. You're saying the communication,
Well,
it would be
yeah, I
any
think since.
type of form
yeah.
of documents that was communicated from that would be a public records request.
On an individual basis, or, because I think it should, I think we should have a copy of the communications, because it's our.
Let me run this by the council, how we would do that, because it would be a public records request.
Yeah, because I wouldn't want to see it kind of outside of the normal
Then I'll
course
get
of
back whether
business.
that's, you want to know whether it's visual or whether it's, what's your other?
Well, the thing is since we're responsible for advising the director,
Right,
we
right.
want to make sure that that's, happening and how it's happening, and that we have a copy of those communications, without having to do this outside process.
Right.
Good. Jim?
Yeah, I was just wondering if it made any difference when it went, what you send from yourself up the ladder, if it's like a motion or just, general communication between us. In other words, if they want to see something that they're going to act upon, does it have to be like in the sense of a motion? Because that's the
No.
normal way for us to make those requests.
It doesn't have to be in the sense of emotion. You can sit, it's like, it was like a few meetings ago, we were talking about, you guys talked about having a budget plan. And I stated, if you guys provide me with those questions and stuff, and I can move those questions up to get the answers. So it didn't matter if it was a motion, it was the simple, send me the email, the communication, I can move that on up. It doesn't have to come in the form of a motion.
Thank you. Have you gotten a response? I remember if it was in September or December that you said you were going to send an urgent plea upstairs to Dr. Goldberg regarding the fee reduction. Have you gotten a response to that?
I had asked you guys to give me all the questions and concerns around it, and we had talked about that, and I never received anything. Every time I went back there and I highlighted it, and I said, I still don't have these questions, but then there was some information I had sent to Gail, and I didn't get a response back. And I have that communication.
From Gail?
No,
Oh,
there's no
to Gail.
response from her. My
Wasn't that
message
2
to her.
times?
Yes, I sent it to her twice, 2 emails, and I didn't get a response back.
You mentioned you were recruiting for 4 permanent positions, was that?
So right now, I thought I was recruiting for 4 permanent. I didn't say permanent in there when I said 4 because I'm recruiting for 2 permanent and then 2 limited durations. And limited durations means they're like permanent, but they have an expiration date. And the reason for that is because right now the authority doesn't want us to double fill positions, and we need to get position authority for positions, which is a lot of information to take over you guys' heads, so it makes it confusing. But those limited durations can turn into permanent, whether or not I have justification of a need to make those permanents when they go to the E-board to legislate for the permanent for the position authority.
So is it only new positions that you need a legislative authority from?
Right, you see what happened was those positions were occupied by full-time permanent people, but they were in a double field using one person's position authority, but had 2 people working in one position. And now we've been directed that we cannot no longer have double fills. They really want those double fills to go away until we can get the position authority. So it's best to fill them as limited duration positions.
So are the same 4 positions you were recruiting for in December, are those the same positions you're still recruiting for, or is this in?
Yes. So what happened is I got approved because we were going through the exception process, and there was a little extra person doing a piece of the exception process that they were going through the process of the exception, but then we had to go back to the same process for the recruitment, to go into the recruitment thing. So it was like we're doing it twice to the same people. That didn't make sense, right? And a lot of us managers complained about it. And so then they recently changed it, right? And the deputy director was needing to approve all these positions. Well, now that she's resigned, and we have an interim, the interim said there's no reason for me to have to go in here and approve it too. So he put it back down to the responsibility of the section managers and administrators. So now the process moved faster. So two of those positions got approved way back in November to be posted, but they didn't have the help. They were short there. And 2 of them just recently got posted. So they're 2 different ones. There's 2 that have been in there for a while, and 2 that just recently got in there, and then they got approved faster.
Are you awaiting legislative approval for your new managers in these positions, or those?
We have to reclassify the position that was my office manager because it's a lower level position. And then to reclassify, we have to have the money to build the other half. So if it's at one level, the salary, we need to find another. We need to find another position to we call it filling it up, because it's substituting with another position that we can take to give that amount, that salary amount. And then we need to reclassify the position at the higher level as well. So we're not waiting for legislation, we need to find a vacant position that's not going to be used somewhere in public health or with or in health authority. Yes.
Well, thanks.
I know it's all above you guys' head, and that's why I used to deal with it.
That's why you sleep so well.
Yeah, it is difficult. But it has been moved through to get it reclassified.
Thank God.
Yes, Larry.
Question related to staffing is, what's your average turnaround time now for applications?
Just like I said, those 2 that I just recently put in there in November, they got approved just the other day.
I'm sorry,
So
for applications for the program.
oh, for the program. Oh, we're within 6 days.
Yeah,
We're caught up.
under 30 days for sure.
Everything is going like that within 6 days.
I was surprised. I
the
got mine
applications
back 20
put in.
days after I sent it
Yeah.
out. Is this mine?
Sorry, we said talk about staffing and positions. I'm still thinking applications.
I
We're in
understand.
positions and you go to
Well, I
that
tell you, it's
application.
nice to get it back. You know,
Yes,
sometimes I forget to
it's
send it off
within
before I
6
come back.
days that a person submits their application. So it's data entry is put in the system immediately.
There you go. So the card's been issued 6 days after you've received it in the mail, like in the mail.
Right.
Wow. Or 6 days after you received it from
No,
the
after 6 days after
cashier.
we received it.
Yeah,
They're
okay.
getting their cards that quick.
Complete application, no necessary, no additional work needed by staff. And that's what happens when you have this kind of slow month.
And how quickly, I'm sorry, how quickly does it get from the cashier's office to your, from the postal service, delivering it to the state building to you?
A little under this process, but our staff actually helps open mail in the cashier's office. So they physically, as soon as that money is processed, they bring it back over. But I think it can take probably 3 days, 4 days before it gets from the post office to the cashier's office and actually processed.
Good. Well, that's a great report, because that's, you're within the statutory guidelines no matter how you interpret it, so.
For one of the
Great.
few times in years.
Right.
I just had a question. We missed a whole bunch of renewal packets that didn't go out, I being one of them. I have heard lately that people are getting their renewal packets, and that's all firm now?
Yes.
They're doing it,
Yes,
okay,
yes.
because that was really surprising. It's their fault, but still, they didn't know. They-
Yes.
Yes, Jim.
I had one kind of observation that I wanted to ask you if you could, I guess, speculate on, and that is that if we went down nearly 4,000 people in just between the last meeting and this one, do you have any idea why?
Yeah, I think part of it is, it's just a snapshot in time. A lot of it is because of when we're actually pulling the statistics. There's still the issue of, as you know, if you're a card holder and your card's good until, say, June, but you turn in an application in March, you're gonna be in the database 2 times. So we tried to narrow the number of patients to a unique number instead of by registrations, because then you're counting the same patient more than once. In our previous reporting, the database really wasn't giving us the most accurate, you know, bad data and bad data. So we were counting registrations as opposed to persons. We don't believe, based on the revenue coming in and the number of applications, that there are actually people dropping off. But yeah, that stood out to me when I pulled the number of patients, because it is lower than the last meeting. But again, it's a snapshot in time. It can go right back up the next meeting. My guess is people went in and made certain to expire the applications that needed expiring right before I pulled this report, whereas possibly in the previous one there were still people that had 2 registrations that some should have expired. We're getting in the weeds here, but we don't think that there's, from what we can tell, it doesn't look like the number has dropped, at least certainly not before that.
Has there been a way, or is there a way for you to, you know, I know a lot of people, when they call the phone number at the OMMP office, they get an answering machine. But is there any way to possibly correlate the number of people, I'm sure there's got to be some, that have called and complained about the fee increase?
Yeah.
We have it in
You have it in
this
your
report.
summary.
Right, so, how
Yeah,
many
the
was that?
complaint.
Not quite as high as before, but
I know it's here.
It's right behind the big Les inquiry report. What is that number?
it's 26. And then, you know, so like I said, it's lower than before. I think people have kind of gotten accustomed to it by now, but
So it's a little bit over a year since the fees
it is
increased.
one of our main complaints.
I think because we're past a year and a half now.
I think that the initiative process and what was on the ballot impacted this as well. Because I knew a lot of people who were not renewing.
Well, actually, was our renewals have not dropped. They're still, it's the new applicants has dropped a little. So we have less. If you look at, some report in here of the trend. So there, you'll see, there's a trend report in there, and you can see, and it compares.
The last
There's yeah, it's a graph, and you can see that it's not our renewals that are dropping, it's our news that we're not having as many new applicants.
And here's on the back of this.
Yeah, I just, you know, back to the staffing, and you'll have to forgive me because, you know, being one of the newer members, it seems like a long occurring event, sort of staffing, high turnover and staffing issues. And
Staff, or my recruitment,
no, not just in general. It just seems like there's just a lot of getting around and temporary and.
that's above, but not in my program, that's just administrative up above.
Exactly, and has that been a fairly rate?
No, because Grant Higginson was the program administrator for years until he retired.
And so just basically, so I'm coincidentally ever since I got on that, that's the. due to the high
Yes,
turnover.
Grant retired, Chris took another position, and then we had, we didn't have an interim before we hired on Michelle for the program support, who's the budget manager. And then we had an interim until we hired a permanent position. And the reason why they put an interim in is because those are high-level positions that need to have a temporary person in there through the recruitment. So that's why there's an interim.
Do you think
So
that's overall causing any damage? You know, have they noticed any issues with having it on, you know, what I mean, it has a
Yeah,
range.
because they all have their own style in there, and whether or not they're committed or not, because they're here for a short term, just to make the interims there just to make sure that the program's being managed. They don't go into the more of the technical level of the responsibility, because they're not gonna be there overall. They're just there to fill the management side, the management part.
And a limited ability to transform that is out of your abilities.
To
Or
transform,
to get permanent.
to get that's the director's role. I believe that.
Gotcha.
They
Yeah,
direct me.
curiosity about the
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
And we do ask, as the section managers, we ask that we participate as far as the recruitment, but they may pick one or two of the other section managers, whether or not we have a part of a say who's going to be recruited for those positions.
And how would you define the morale of your staff under you currently?
The morale? I just been talking about this restructure, we did a top to bottom assessment, and the morale was down.
A little or a lot?
A lot. But it may have changed. That was back in, we did that assessment in September. So that, I think that may have changed now.
What makes you think that?
Because I do updates with my staff. They're getting a one-on-one with a manager, and me being the top manager of the program, they're getting to meet individually with me.
Yeah, so anecdotal.
I cut back on the meeting times. There was a lot of time spent in meetings. I removed people that shouldn't. There's been people that caused a lot of the uncomfortableness, and that person's been moved on. So there's some changes that have happened on my part to make it improve, and that's where I keep talking about. I drafted a strategic plan, and I've got action items in there based on the assessment, based on my plan for the future growth of the program, and I've been addressing those things.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, and I haven't been referred to the task.
And also because we addressed the backlog, and we had a plan for that, and it got cleaned up without overtime.
Yeah, congratulations.
I didn't need no overtime, it just needed to hold people accountable, and I think that as well is that I've been holding people accountable and set standards for them to be able to produce, and they're producing.
Great.
And so that helped the morale as well, because now they're not as stressed. That decreased the phone calls, so that helped as well.
Any more questions for the staff? Okay. Do you want to? Okay.
I have one more. The reason this question is coming is because it's a issue that I've had a couple of people come to me and speak to me about in Southern Oregon, Brookings, and that is that I guess there's a few people who believe that they paid the fee at some time or another, a year or so ago. They never received their card. But the money was taken, they got the check back or whatever it was, it showed that it was processed, but they never received a card. And so they were wondering if they, can reapply and that money, basically be either refunded, or how do they go about it? Is there a way for them to contact you? And
did they ever contact us originally when they didn't receive the call? I would have been calling right away if I didn't receive a call.
There's a couple different issues. If you're going to talk about an issue where a person says, we said to them we mailed your cards and they didn't receive them in the mail, or are you talking about there could be a situation where a person is paid and we don't have any record?
The instance that I'm talking about is that the person filled out the paperwork, sent it in, and then who knows, maybe it got lost in the mail. I'm sure there's a lot of reasons why it couldn't happen. But somehow, it must have gotten at least to the department because they believe that, they've seen the money that came out.
Yeah, so there's different solutions. So if you can prove to us you paid money and we're saying we have no record at the bank, you should be able to get proof from a bank, and we can go from there and show financial services that we processed this money on this day. Because we don't have no money.
So they
now, if it's an issue of us
told
saying we never got, that would be an issue of us saying we never got an application. If a person said, we say we mailed your card, and they say, well, I never got it, and we have a different process for that, then there's a maybe an issue.
Okay. Yeah.
So definitely have them call the program. 'cause we need
Right,
to
that's
start.
what I did. I mean, it's it's really difficult.
We have all kinds of issues come up all the time, and I know from personal experience that you guys bend over backwards to help people find something out.
Oh, yeah.
What bothers me is people who just don't even bother to contact them. They're just, yeah, and a lot of, I have that happen. We have that happen. They haven't even called the OMMP, and then they're bitching and complaining a year later that they didn't get a card. And there's a certain amount of personal responsibility here.
Yep.
There's confusion to a lot of people that go to some clinics, they think that's all they have to do, and that they're done. And then they come, then finally they get hold of us, and they've never sent us anything. They don't realize that there's another process. So we've tried to work on this with clinics, but that's been an issue. People think, but I already paid the doctor this, and they think that's the process.
And doctors who sign too. A doctor signs, they don't have any idea, they can't tell a patient even what to do with it necessarily. We've had that come up. And they come to me and they don't even know what the rules are at all. They have no idea, they know there must be something. But that's a problem when the doctor signs directly, because there's no education that goes with it. So. Oh, shut up.
Did you want to take care of that bylaw?
Yes.
Okay.
So on the, between these, we don't have on the agenda the bylaws. We did never finalize the bylaws. There were a lot of motions made at the last meeting for discussion for those things to be, some areas to be addressed. So one set of bylaws that has the 10-23-12 line, that was the bylaws that we looked at last meeting.
Yeah.
You got 2 or 3 of them in here, Mark, I guess. All these copies. And then the other one is 12-6 is what the day after the meeting, our last meeting, I made the corrections that you guys had motions. With it, there's some that I didn't make the corrections, and I'll tell you the reason why. So the first motion was by Sandy for Article 2. I went there and made those edits. You can see on the version that says 12-6-2012. And then the other one by the Stormy, that has been addressed. And then the motion by Brian for Article 3 to say the director must recommend the ACMM for removal of the board. That cannot be changed because the committee doesn't have the authority to appoint or remove the members. It's Dr. Goldberg that has to appoint or remove, or the authority, whoever his delegate is. So that also goes for the other article, the other one by Brian, not the other article, the other motion by Brian that said on Article 3, and to say that again, don't have authority. So those things that didn't change. And then
before you move on, is that legislative authority or administrative rule?
The statute says the director shall appoint the committee. So the committee doesn't have any authority, and that's not administrative aspect either. That's not a part of your mission or your role to appoint. But you guys can make recommendations and that are considered as we do. So.
Right. Yeah, I know about the appointment, but what about removal?
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. He appoints and removes.
But the statute only addresses.
I understand that. Yeah. Right.
And did Shannon O'Fallon go over all this?
Yes. 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 And we discussed it too.
Sandy's question.
Yeah, I think it's Article, let's see it. Article 3. I'm so sorry. Can I come back to it? I lost it, I'm sorry. It was a change in word. Notify an official, and it says officer and one official in the other. Here it is, under 4C. A member must notify a committee officer. That's the way it's supposed to be, right? Not official.
Where?
Yeah, officer.
So it's an officer, not official?
Right.
Okay. This is the corrected. So the corrected one
Oh,
has
yeah.
official instead of officer.
Yeah.
4C.
Wasn't actually corrected at all.
Oh, so in the old one, in the new one,
It was never actually.
okay, I got it.
And my suggestion for time is, we're not going to approve these this meeting. I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to review them in the interim. But for now, I think maybe we do our best to get, so any house cleaning stuff we can save for the interim. And so if Tawana just wants to explain changes or not changes.
So then, Sandy, for the next one, Sandy wanted the language under the terms and service changed to say eligible to apply for reappointment. That was changed. The motion that Ms. Smith to change language from terms fewer to terms less than a year, that was changed. And then I had a question regarding your motion. It said something about accept changes with exception of deleting health and safety. Are you saying you want to keep the health and safety?
Can you reference a section?
It's under Article 3, Section 4. You said accept everything.
4B.
Oh, it just said 4 in here, so I didn't know.
I guess I was asking the question of why health and safety was suggested to be deleted. I can't remember the explanation.
You said, it says accept changes with the exception of deleting health and safety.
Yeah, I guess means retaining the language, like the duties of the committee
Okay, so you want
and
to keep
health
it.
and safety. Yeah.
So you want to keep health and safety. Okay, all right. And then, Ms. Smith to change Article 4, Section 2C to change, that was changed, of course, because we're not the community health and health planning. And that was a good catch, I can do that one. And then, Todd to accept changes to Article 5, that has been changed. Todd wanted to change language in Article 6, Section 1 to adopt suggested changes to change must to shall. And then the committee should meet rather than shall meet and not adopt changes to Article 6, Section 2. The advice on that, everything is changed except for the public meeting law applies, is what I was told by my counsel, and that the public record section has moved to the end. So it's still, the public record section is still in there, but it was moved to the end of the bylaws. Dr. Lindberger, to include Eugene, I added that was taken care of. Oh, I didn't see that, Sandy. Okay. Is everybody okay with that? To add Eugene Metro?
What did you say about Lee Berger?
That's what he said. He wanted Dr. Lindberger.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I did say Lindberger, didn't I? My dad. Lindberger. He wanted to include Portland, Salem, and Eugene metro areas to the Article 6, Section 1, meaning the meeting. And I just want to make sure that I did change that.
So he suggested adding Eugene to that?
Yes. And I did change that, so that means that there will be at least one outside of those 3 areas. Okay? The motion for Ms. Smith to change the board members to say 6 committee members, that was changed. Ms. Burbank to change board members to 6 votes by committee members in Article 6. That was changed. And then Ben had asked for may provide. I didn't change that, and my reason is because of the staffing and the resources and the costs associated. But I would, but I will.
And y'all forgive me, could you just real
Which
quick
one do
speak
you-
to
Oh,
that?
I'm
Let's
sorry.
say,
I'm
if
going
you
too
could quote
fast for
each
you.
time at the
Okay.
beginning, just the section and then the subsection.
Okay, so in Article 6, staffing, I'm just looking at what the motions were from the last in the meeting notes.
Yep.
You had asked to change to OHA will not provide to OHA may provide.
I like that.
And so I don't want to put may because that means that that's going to be staffing time to go down there. And our role is to get the cards out when we have to pull others to do the meeting minutes and so forth for subcommittee, because this is for a subcommittee. And I will say that we can provide support for scheduling those meetings, but as far as to attend and take meeting minutes, I'm not willing to have, because we don't have the resources, because we need the staff already, we're short, and it's cost associated when we're pulling staff to go down, to go meet at these subcommittees. And you guys have how many subcommittees? 2? Okay, so that means there's 2, in addition to these ACMs quarterly. I'm not sure how many times the subcommittee meet, but that means that we're gonna have to have somebody to pull from work. And today is already, we're short staffed back in the office because I have people out now to support these meetings.
Sam?
So let's pick a situation that doesn't exist right now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say we had a subcommittee meeting about something about the budget or something we needed advice from you. I'm not talking about staffing and taking minutes, but somebody to come and talk to us at a subcommittee meeting. Would this mean that they would not be allowed to do that?
Yes. But you guys' subcommittee meetings are not, you have the horticulture subcommittee and these are,
We're talking about maybe future subcommittees as well, you know.
And staff support may be different than appearing at a meeting for informational purposes.
let's
Right.
see,
So,
I'm not just talking about what you guys are doing now, but somebody who is going to come budget person or a science person or whatever to meet with that subcommittee. Would that absolutely forbid them to be participating in any level?
No, that's the question. I think I better check with Shannon. Her and I talked about this in depth because I was saying, well, if we say may, that means, you know, these subcommittees are not.
How about might?
Huh?
How about might or something, you know, that's
No,
not.
I was saying that I
doesn't
would put in there
have to.
and give the limitations, because I don't want to say might or may,
Yeah.
because then what's the extent, and that's why I would say I will put in there that we'll provide support for scheduling the meetings. But even everything that you guys discussed at those subcommittees, you guys bring it here, and then that takes it back to us. I mean, that, you know.
Thank you.
Could you leave out the word staff? May provide support, leave out the word staff. Sometimes there'll be materials that you can help a subcommittee with or whatever.
well, taking out
Let's
staff
say-
would further limit it.
But there wouldn't be a will not.
Okay. Ben and then Alice.
So,
Yes, yeah. Well, that's why when we're here at these meetings, and if they need any input or advice about the subcommittee, that's where you bring it here to us while we're here. And so that's why when you're saying support, that could be attending the meeting, taking a meeting minute.
sorry.
If it's a
Making a
problem, we
copy,
can always come back
do
and
it.
change it in the future.
Or you could just put in there to be determined based on specific needs and
That's
circumstances.
I would work
That
with
way,
that.
each
Yeah.
one can be evaluated on its own merits.
Very good.
I like that.
Good
Yeah.
point.
Based on
Okay, so we have about a minute before we need to get to our next agenda item.
Okay, so, the next one was Mrs. Smith, Cheryl, to revise the language in Article 10. I really need her here for this because I didn't understand what she was really asking for. So what I will do is just send that email directly to her so she can address that one because I didn't change anything because it's a big question. I'm not sure what she would like the language to be or what needed to be cleaned up in 10. She didn't specify, so I just need some clarity on that. And the last one, by you, Todd, that was changed. Was to Article 12, with the exception of retaining revisions in the history. So we went ahead and kept the revision in there. Okay.
All right, so yeah, we'll all review these changes in interim, and we'll make it an agenda item for the next meeting to approve these with any suggested changes. It looks like our special guest is here, so we can. Would be okay to schedule the next meeting after a lunch break?
Yes, that's good.
Okay, good. Welcome, Dr. Goldberg.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everybody?
Doing good. So I thought maybe we would begin by introducing ourselves.
Great.
Yeah, we can start with Laird over here and work our way around the horn.
Thanks, Matt. I'm Laird Funk, communicated with you before, and I hope Terry's still taking care of your problem.
And I'm Ben Mack.
Todd Delato, I chair the ACMM, and I'm also serve as chair of the Horticulture Research and Safety Committee. I'm a horticultural researcher and consultant based in Corvallis, Oregon. And, thank you for being here.
Thanks. I'm Jim Clark. I've been here since the beginning, thanks to you. Thank you.
Alice,
Is that a good thing?
That's good for us. Alice Ivany, patient advocate.
I'm Sandy Burbank. I'm Executive Director of Mothers Against Misuse and Abuse. We have clinics, and I'm the chair of the outreach committee to educate patients.
I'm Alan Cohen, physician psychiatrist. I work in corrections and community mental health centers.
And I'm Stormy Ray from Houston, Oregon. And I'm the one that suggested to some of these wonderful people in Fifth Grief about 2004 that we really needed an advisory committee to help you. And so I'm retiring today. I get a chance to say thank you. It's been 8 years, and it's time that I need to do some other things. But I'll always be here if there's anything I can do to help this program.
That's great. Well, thanks to you, Stormy, but also thanks to everybody for your service. I know that, jobs like this are often thankless and certainly don't come with any remuneration for the time that people really put into this. And I know a lot of people on the committee put a lot of time and effort into this, and want to say thank you. We really appreciate that, really appreciate the input, the advice, and the hard work that the program wouldn't be where it is were it not for the advice of the group. And thanks particularly, Stormy, for you and what's been your leadership over the years. We really appreciate it.
Now, I don't know how much of a chance you get to meet your staff, so we can give them an opportunity to introduce themselves.
I'm a hospital custodian records and a program analyst.
Tawana, how are you?
I'm Jennifer Alcaraz. I'm a law enforcement liaison.
Oh, nice to meet you.
I'm law enforcement liaison too.
The law enforcement liaison, they're the main ones that speak with law enforcement and take the phone calls from patients and work with the clinics as well. So they work between the clinics, the patients, and law enforcement.
Okay. Is there anything more you want to tell us about yourself, or?
I try and keep that quiet. No,
We'll find out.
No, I think, as you know, I'm a family doc. Been here in this state since 1992, and have been in a number of positions up at OHSU and with Medicaid managed care, and I've been on a lot of different sides of the healthcare issue, both from up until 2003 when I came to work for the state. I took care of patients. I like to think of myself as continuing to take care of patients, but in a different capacity at a population level. And now I've been working at the state for a number of years and really understanding things not just from the community, the patient, the provider perspective, but also from the policy perspective. And I think, as you know, I've been head of the Oregon Health Authority since we started it about 2.5, 3 years ago. And we are on a quest to create the nation's best healthcare system. And not going to stop until we get there. So that's me.
Well, I've known most everyone here at this table for at least as long as the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act has been in effect. So our introductions may be brief, but the depth of experience many of these people have up here, you've really got a dream team advising you. And so part of our reason for inviting you here is we want to know better how we can advise you. And there's been some frustrations, particularly with the previous administrator, around responsiveness to our advice. Most things we provide as advice don't get followed through with or responded to. So we're kind of left with sort of a morale problem of what's our purpose here? Why are we spending so much time and energy providing advice when it doesn't seem to be fruitful? So we want to know how we can best advise you.
It's a great question. I think first and foremost, it sounds like we need to perhaps have a bit of a discussion around some of the expectations, because it sounds to me like there are some certainly unmet expectations on your side, and what you should certainly expect follow through. That doesn't necessarily mean, if you're telling me that you often provide advice, but it's not being, are you saying it's not being responded to, or it's not being acted on?
Well, we don't expect you to act on everything, so our expectations are fairly low in that aspect. But we do appreciate to have some sort of response, and oftentimes Tawana is in a position where she doesn't really know why it wasn't responded to, and usually the only response we get is something that came from legislative or legal counsel that tells us why they think you can't follow her advice. So.
I think I really value what you can provide in terms of two things. I think they're the two things in statute, that you can help provide advice about how we can have an administratively effective program. And to me, that means how we can organize and deliver the service in a way that meets the needs of clients. And at the same time, really carries out the intent of the statutes around the program. I think that's a phenomenal role, and that's the one primarily would like this group to advise on. I think the other piece is the other piece of the statute, which really talks about setting fees. And I also understand that that's where there's been a little bit of friction over the last year. And I'd actually be prepared to talk about that. I think that, you know, as you know, not all of that is within our purview. That part of what we do is, you know, carry out the certain issues at the direction of the legislature when it comes to budgets. And we don't have the ultimate say. I know that the fees were raised this past year, or a year and a half ago at the beginning of the biennium. And I know that that caused some concern by a lot of people in the program, people on the advisory committee. I think that's one of the places where, quite frankly, we were carrying out legislative direction, and we're not in a place to revisit those fees without revisiting them with the legislature. I think one of the places we could work more effectively together is in speaking with the legislature about some of these things. So, for instance, the legislature is having budget hearings now. I'm assuming the committee is going to testify at some point?
Well, we have tried to communicate with the Ways and Means Committee around that fee increase, but we hadn't received any responses from any individual member or the committee in general. So yeah, we would certainly like to advise them, and actually Representative Buckley is going to join us for about 15 minutes later.
Yeah, no, and that's fantastic. That's great input to the co-chair. I also think there's opportunities at you know, public hearings and public testimony on the budget to be able to provide that to legislators.
Well, we tried to have testimony before everything happened, and we were deliberately, Baird Cass said in a meeting when we asked that he deliberately kept the news from us that the fees were being considered to go up, and they went up 2 days after our meeting. So it was a deliberate attempt, and that's in the record. You can go back and listen to them. I definitely want to talk about the fees, but I want to give you just a tiny bit of history.
Sure.
In 2001, we approached Grant Higginson, and we were wanting to have some kind of a group with him, and that morphed into what was called the administrative work group. And we didn't have really authority, but we met with Grant, and every couple of first it was really often. Mary Leverett was still in there. I don't even know if you knew her, but no. And we got along until we had the committee formed. Then we had it was a little more difficult because we had to public notice of everything. But this group, several of these people, Todd was there, several of us worked on that group ahead of time. Now, one of the main things that we always did with the committee is we'd get together and we'd look at all the forms that were going to come out, and we'd have our input. And that was really important. In the last year, that stopped completely. And we had brand new forms. One of the things we're going to address later is a cover form that has gone with the packets, about the ID packets. It's 1 page, and it's very inadequate. Totally inadequate. Doesn't even tell people how they can get a copy of the law if they're a brand new patient. This has never run by us for input, and I consider that to be a major thing that we do. It didn't happen. Now we're going to visit it now, but that's been out there for a long time. And that kind of thing, it's so simple. It's not complicated like fees, but I think that all of this kind of thing, we just started a renewal packet. We didn't even know it was coming. All of a sudden we've got a different packet out, and people are getting different information. And I think I'm all about education, so I think that the patients need to be educated about this law, because you can be a legally protected patient and grow a plant 1 inch too tall and you're a Class A felon. A lot of people don't know that, and people who go to their doctors and just a regular physician, they don't know, the doctors don't know what the laws are. So I'm always pushing for the ability to at least educate the patient about what the rules are, and we're often told that we don't have the authority to educate. And that is extremely frustrating. We made a PowerPoint presentation. We worked forever and made a book that got, by the time it got printed, it's so out of date, I mean, the educational part of this program is so important because it's so complicated. And I've seen that going away more and more. And now the staff here is helping us. I love these people because they're here, they're still here. Everybody else comes and goes so fast we don't even know what's going on. The fees are very important and that we have the opportunity to give our input. But what happened when these fees changed is we were just, I felt like I'd been slapped. It's like, what? And we didn't even know about it. And we asked, yes, I deliberately withheld this information. Barrett has said that. And you can imagine how that makes us feel. And now we're getting reports that are not adequate for us to even evaluate the fees. And we know what we say doesn't have to be acted on. But just having that information out from our unique perspective, we're not a bunch of hippies here to get high. A lot of people treat us like that, including the legislature. And so I just had to say all that. Thank you.
No, that was great. So let's just take a couple of those things point by point, because I think you made some great points. So the first is, education. I would think, and I'd be interested, hearing from staff that one of the ways to administratively run a good program is to be certain people understand how the program runs, etc. I would think education about the program is certainly, and how it's administered and what the law is, falls within, I think, the purview of us as an agency. I mean, we administer this program, you have to administer something that people understand. And I would think that there should be an opportunity to have some input into how we educate people about the program. So that doesn't happen?
Well, the handbooks, they were a part of that. So the first thing we did to reach the client's needs was to come up with a handbook. When I first started, they were working on a handbook prior to me that was written and designed by the committee members. And then it was never updated. We got it approved and got it onto our website, but it was never updated. So with Stormy's help, I took a different step. I decided to establish a handbook from the program itself, and worked with communications, and so we do have a handbook right now to educate them, and it's current. I didn't put the fees in there because I knew that fees could change. So
let's not talk about the fees yet.
Yeah.
But so have you guys had input on that handbook?
Nobody even knows it's available.
No, you guys did have
We
input on
spent
it.
several
Yeah,
years.
way back, but
Yeah.
I'm saying the handbook, there's nowhere that says you can get the handbook
I
here.
have no idea where to get it.
We don't have handbooks. I
It's
mean,
on the website, and Stormy may want to speak to about how she got it in the library.
I probably passed out over 750 of them at this point. They are absolutely excellent. They dispel all of the misbeliefs and misinformation that has been spread out there. These handbooks are I don't hand out a pamphlet anymore. I hand out the handbook. This is an excellent source for everybody out there.
Hardly anybody knows that the handbook exists.
Well, Eastern
what?
Oregon has been
We mailed them out packets to the clinics. We have it on the website. We talked about it in here. You guys reviewed it, and I gave an example even by the email of how it was going to be designed and looked at before we even designed it. And
Sandy, I want to clarify something. I think that there's a difference. I think we've tried to stress that we aren't here to advocate. Not that we're not here to educate.
Right.
So we absolutely are here to educate people on the law, how the program works, how to get a card, but what we don't do is advocate. And that, I think, is the distinction.
No, I'm talking totally about educate. How many plants, how big plants, how much you can have, can you sell it, all that stuff. That's what I'm concerned that patients know. Now, I don't care about the other stuff. That's out of your.
We need to figure out how to get that out.
And the handbook, we have a cover letter that goes out. Right now, it doesn't even have the website address on it. It doesn't have a mention of the handbook. Brand new patients getting a brand new ID, they have a cover letter that doesn't even tell them how to get a copy of the law.
And that is that.
And we're changing that today. But that's what we've been dealing with. Absolutely. It's so complex and so complicated, and it's been inadequate. Whatever we've done has been very inadequate, is how I feel.
So it sounds like we're at a point we could revisit input around community. It sounds to me, I mean, listening to the conversation, that there's varying degrees of understanding, even on the committee, about what materials exist. And if that's the case, then one can only imagine what that's like in the, that there's a fair amount of difference in people's understanding. I think communicating clearly is a pretty basic function. And maybe something that the committee could do is have as a regular agenda item reviewing communication materials and providing input, and maybe that's a good way to sort of start out. I'm looking at the the agenda to the meeting, but I don't know if you have a communication committee or some way that in a pretty clear, regular way you can review and provide input and advice to the materials.
Yep, that's our outreach committee.
I was gonna say, there's an outreach committee,
Yeah,
and
we're
then we
working on
also
that better
established
today.
the presentation that was, the outreach committee designed a presentation for the client.
I think overall there's maybe been some frustrations that have been kind of consistent, but some that have gone up and down, and I think a lot of that has to do with the turnover of administrators, and we particularly had a very difficult time with our most recent permanent administrator, Gail Shibley. For the entire 7 months that she was on board, she hadn't returned any of my phone calls or only one email, and kind of put off meeting with anybody. Meanwhile, kind of, making some decisions that were rather hostile to both the ACMM and the program. But we can talk about that more later. And the other part is, I'm forgetting what that other part was. But anyway, you had something to say, Stormy, and then Ellen.
The handbook, I went to the Madison County Library, and I requested that they put one of these handbooks in the reference section. And so anybody in our community can simply go into the library, and it's in the reference section. When I contacted the libraries to see if we could get them through all of the state libraries, I was told that we had to do them individually. I thought I had shared that with the committee here a couple months back. But we can get these put into the reference section of every library. But they ask that we do it individually to each library.
And branches.
At every branch, that's right.
And this is on the web, right?
And that has been about, 6 or 7 years in the making, which the process actually started before the ACMM was created. So, Ellen had...
The outreach committee, which considers education as part of its function, spent a lot of time formulating a letter for physicians. There's confusion about what's a prescription and what's really required for a physician's role in this whole process. Input from the OMA was put into that sheet. It was presented here, and the response was it's advocating and not educating, and it was simply dismissed. And it's been posted other places on the internet, but certainly not with our website here.
I mean, it sounds like, I guess I understand that there can be differences of opinion about what's advocating versus educating, but it also seems to me that's where people sit down and say, okay, we've got a difference of opinion, how can we rework this so it fits an education frame instead of an advocacy? I mean, that, you know, I would hope that, you know, it's that kind of spirit that would permeate the discussions, and that it not be, you know, you brought me the wrong rock, forget it. I mean, that just, so, you know, maybe we can reinvigorate some of that, and maybe, you know, change expectations where, I mean, I think we can have, you know, differences of opinion, but then the issue is how do you work towards something that meets the needs of education and that doesn't, the people that run the program feel like it's advocacy, because that does, I think, cross a line for us in terms of administering the program, but we should be able to work that out. I would think it'd be pretty easy to get a group of physicians together that could agree on what an education letter to fellow physicians sort of looks like.
I'd love to, if you don't mind, return to our role of input on fee structure.
Okay.
We prior to the 2011 session, the fees have always been decided administratively.
Correct.
And we, even prior to that, we had a wonderful program support analyst, or you're the program analyst. Anyway.
Program support manager.
Program support manager, Chris Roru. He was just wonderful with his forecasting and analysis and everything. And we unfortunately we lost him to, I think, Fish and Wildlife. But so we haven't had any information that's very useful other than the cash balance and our period reporting histories. And also in 2011, of course, the legislature kind of took over the role, hopefully temporary, to setting the fees. And of course, as Sandy mentioned, we only had a couple of days' notice before the decision was made, and we didn't have the opportunity to even participate in a public hearing. So I felt that year our role to provide annual input was rather thwarted, and we haven't been able to have a discussion around the fee structure since then. And you know, I believe that bill that caused the fee structure to change is sort of a budgetary bill for the biennium, which we're facing the end of another biennium here. So it's time to, you know, address the fees again. And also the ACMM put some very thoughtful work into a proposal to adjust the fee schedule so that it didn't negatively affect the most vulnerable people of the patients. And that proposal was supported by the ACMM, and then it was also used by the Rules Advisory Committees subsequent to that. So we had both advice from the ACMM and the Rules Advisory Committee to have a more gentle fee structure on the lowest income and most disabled patients. But then it wasn't implemented because the legislature said, well, this is what we wanted. So yeah, thanks for your input. but I think one very important part of that fee structure, one of the consequences of not asking for our input was that it affected the most disabled and poorest patients of all. Not only because, you know, at the time, 40% of the cardholders received a low-income discount. And they all received the same low-income discount, whether they're on SSI, food stamps, or Oregon Health Plan. So they removed the discount, or they reduced the discount for the food stamp and Oregon Health Plan recipients, which made up 39% of the patient population. So only 1% of the population actually still received that significant discount. So right off the bat, the poor, some of the poorest, 90% of the poorest received a 500% increase in their fees. Plus, it added fees such as a grower fee. So if a patient is too disabled to grow for themselves or has some other reason for not being able to, then it costs them an extra $50 to appoint somebody else to grow for them. So that affects the most disabled of the patients. Plus, those patient-grower relationships often end up badly. Not all the time. Sometimes they do. So then it would cost them an additional $100 to get out of that bad relationship. If they found that their grower was selling or diverting other than that, it would cost them nothing. So it really impacted. And I think if we actually got to provide input into that fee structure, be it to the legislature or to the administration, then I feel that would have been very different. So I feel that we do have a place, if the legislature is going to be involved in adjusting our fees, that we have a seat at the table for that.
So what couple comments. I appreciate the input. I think that this last legislative session we saw what was a change in the historical relationship between the agency, the program, and the legislature around the fees. Let's just put that on the table for what it is without talking about whether or not it's good, bad, or otherwise. I think in the past, the agency has set the fees in order to recoup the amount of resources we needed to administer the program. And that was, I think, how this has operated since the beginning of the program. That changed this past legislative session. And the legislature set the fee to do two things. One, to recoup the dollars that it would take to administer the program, but also clearly to have some other revenues to fund other programs within the agency. Whether that's good, bad, or otherwise, I don't think is for me to comment. What I can say is this. I think that given what happened and given now a year of experience, it would be really helpful, I think, and a great role for the committee to outline for the Ways and Means folks, as well as for those of us within the agency, what you see as the effect that's had, and to make some recommendations going forward based on now what's been about a year and a half of experience. I think that'd be a fantastic role for this group. I can't promise an outcome of that,
Sure.
but I certainly could say that there won't be an outcome without any input.
Sure. And I know you're walking the halls of the Capitol a lot this time of year. Is there something that you can do to ask them to give us a seat at the table? Because I don't think if we try to get a seat at the table, we're going to get it.
Well, when you say seat at the table, I'm not sure I know what you mean, because I'm not so certain I have a seat at the table. I know the budget's put together by the legislature, and I think you get a seat at the table by providing input and in writing and by testifying when there's public hearings. But there isn't a table of anyone other than legislators who actually set the legislative budget. So what I can assure you about is I'm happy to be certain that I get your input to the Ways and Means folks and put it in their hands and be certain that they're aware of the input. I'm not certain there's a table, so to speak.
Yeah, but like for instance, do you think it would be appropriate for us to be invited to present at the legislative days, the pre-session?
We haven't been able to do that in the past.
To present at the
legislative days, those couple days in November and December when
in the
they
interim
get
committee
reports.
hearings?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's appropriate to do that, and oftentimes there's opportunities for public testimony that doesn't have to be invited. And we can certainly help, one, advocate for an opportunity to talk. Number two, we can be certain you're aware of what the opportunities are. Understanding that not, some of them are just like a lot of things. It's coming down here, showing up, and asking to be a part of an agenda when there's public testimony.
Sure thing. Sandy has her hand up in the air.
Okay, I was just gonna say, everything good and well, we're paying the OHA for these programs. I'm not really clear, and you may not be able to answer it, when the whole process is coming around, in my mind, I saw the legislature saying, this is what I thought, hey, DHS, OHA, we need this much money. Pick what program. I don't know if it happened that way, my paranoia, but now we have already seen twice the general fund or DHS grab the money that was in the arrears, $1 million almost one time. And now we have, how much is in there right now? A bunch. And what we expect to see, honestly, is the legislature is going to take it. That's why I am so adamant about us saying what the prices would we reduce to pay for the program and pay for the extra programs without this millions of dollars from poor sick people sitting there waiting to be put in the general fund. That's what we expect.
It's the least capable class of people that this money is being extracted from, and it's wrong.
Thank you.
Jesse James used to go.
Where?
Dr. Goldberg, one of the first things you said relating to the legislature and budget and stuff was, I expect you'll be down there testifying. And well, the problem we have here is that for any of us to go down and testify, it can only be by what we've been told by council as individuals. Because we've been told by council that the charter of this group is to advise you and not the legislature. And so therefore, any work we do as a committee at this table to advise the legislature is useless. And so when this committee was first formed, Bill Morissette and Senator Cruz both said that they expected this committee to be able to advise the legislators on things they needed to know about the medical marijuana program. When the statute hit print, that part wasn't there. We keep acting like we would like to have it there, that it would be there, but it's not there. So the weakness of us providing as a committee useful testimony to the legislature doesn't exist.
In 2005, it was our understanding the ACMM was being created to act as a liaison between, well, for everyone, for participants, registrants in the program, legislature, and you guys. It hasn't worked out that way.
Yeah, there were a few of us that were on that legislative advisory committee that worked with Senator Morissette and I think it was Representative Cruz at the time. So we feel there is a kind of a strong intent for us to advise the legislature. But I think one of the problems.
That's an interesting question. I should be interested in talking to council about that.
Yeah.
I know the statute says you provide advice to the agency.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty clear. But well, I can't speak to intent. I don't know that precludes, but I'd be interested in council's opinion, writing a letter to the legislature.
We're ready to give advice, you know?
Yeah.
You know, we get,
I get that.
you know, we just need some structure where our advice reaches the cogent people, the ones that do the work.
Yeah.
Now the agency does no longer do the work. We still need to reach the people that do the work, and they're over there in that other building, and we don't have a pathway.
Well, you can, well, I only play a lawyer on TV. I'm not actually a lawyer, so I can't provide legal advice.
Right.
But I would think, and it's a good conversation to have with Peter Buckley. I mean, I work a lot with the legislature. They like getting input. I mean, that's what the legislature is about.
And we as individuals have been down there for
getting
years.
input. You know, what happens to that's a different story. Let me check with legal counsel about where some of these lines are. I mean, look, I think that providing information on what's happened for the last year and a half with the changing fee structure seems to be, I mean, an important piece of information. How that's going to get acted on, I don't know. But whether that gets given to the legislature or that can get given to me and I can pass that along to the legislature, we can look at how to do that. What I'm hearing is that you'd like to make it clear what some of the effect of that has been.
Sure.
That seems to be something that is a real concern, and let's talk to council about how to do that. I mean, sometimes the question is, how do we make that happen, not can we do it this way?
Right.
So let's find out.
Yeah, and that also brings up another frustration we've been having is the legal counsel assigned to us has been, I'm sure our attorney on the committee could probably speak more eloquently to that than I, but there's been probably a little more than a perceived hostility in Ms. O'Fallon's advice and interaction with the ACMM and the program, and it just seems to have been, not only the most negative interpretation of statute, but are you prepared to talk about that briefly?
Well, I'm prepared to say that the change in Attorney General will hopefully eliminate the hostility the former Attorney General's office had to its client, this program. Our expectation is that the new Attorney General will be not hostile to any of her client agencies, including this one, and the advice through Ms. O'Fallon will be more of a representative rather than a conflict of interest. Rather than go into the litany of issues that were raised by letter concerning this inherent conflict of interest and hostility, I think we're looking forward to a better representation by an attorney who appreciates the interest of her client. And with that said, I would expect that also to flow differently through the Attorney General's representative, Ms. O'Fallon. I think she was just doing her job. Her boss told her to cut this program. Hopefully this new Attorney General will tell her to represent this program. With that said, I have a few other remarks, as you can well imagine. I don't see, for example, you need to talk, you're certainly going to talk to Ms. O'Fallon, but every citizen has a right to talk to the legislature, and every committee member of an agency has a right to talk to the legislature, unless so prohibited or prescribed through statute or rule or whatever. Going through the bylaws, there's only a remark about members talking to the media. There's nothing about any prohibition or qualification or restriction on talking to the legislature. And I would not like to see that written in somewhere. So it's presumed that something is allowed to be done until some statute tells you you can't do it, right? Nothing is a
Nothing
crime.
ever surprises me about the law.
That's
So
a fact.
I don't know.
That's a fact. But with that said, one of the parts of the bylaws is we serve at your pleasure. So really, it's really up to you. Because you could say, look, if you guys talk to the media, if you guys talk to the legislature, I'm going to fire you, I'm going to kick you off. Or you can say, hey, look, it's my responsibility to keep you on the board and appoint you or kick you out. And if you want to talk to the legislature on behalf of the ACMM, fine by me. It really, ultimately, by default, rests with you. Because there's no prohibition in the statute, there's no prohibition in the administrative rule. But if you tell us, you do it, you're off, well, that's a different story. But if you say, go ahead, because you're the one that's responsible, we serve at your pleasure.
I'm responsible for all of you.
Yeah, believe it or not. So really, I mean, that's really where it boils down, because if you don't prohibit us from doing it, then what does? With that said, I would like to move on to another subject. If I was in your position, would find it somewhat embarrassing that my agency couldn't put PTSD on the debilitating qualification list, and that we had to go to the legislature, when the legislature wanted us as the agency to add new debilitating conditions. Again, this is something that is in the past, largely responsible for our previous Attorney General. I'd like to know, this last administrative rule approved by the Attorney General was approved by the previous Attorney General. So it contains that same hostility and conflict of interest that we discussed before. We can change this if we want to. We can add debilitating conditions like PTSD that are well deserving of the benefits received by medical marijuana. And we can do it in a way that's rational, fair, and intended to pursue and achieve the objective of the statute. And I'd really like for you to do that, to allow us to do that. And I don't know that a sentence is going to do it, but I think we should be a strong voice when it becomes a debilitating condition. We have 2 physicians on this board. We have some lawyers somewhere. And we've got people who have been involved in medical marijuana. And the language of the statute that says we have to be advocates of the program in order to be on this board. And so, if the intention of any administrative rule is to enforce and advance the purpose of the statute, then certainly advocates of the statute fulfill that role. I'd really like you to consider it. I'd like to communicate with you about it. I'd like to somehow persuade you to get it done.
Well, I'm certainly all ears. What I don't know, I mean, you're making a pitch for advocacy and determining what is and isn't covered by the program, and I don't know whether that's within the purview of the group. I'd certainly be willing to listen to what you have to say about that. I'm open-minded. Having looked at the charge of this group, I don't know whether that's within it. I didn't see that within it.
You could make it by rewriting the administrative rule, you see? That's what would correct this problem.
Oh, I see.
Deep deficiency.
You're saying I have superpowers.
Well, you're the one that says, write the administrative rule that plays out the intent of the statute to create more debilitating conditions. The previous administrator drafted an administrative rule which had 3 people who were advocates of the statute and 3 who were literally and openly hostile to the statute. Now, how can you have an administrative rule that could possibly be charged by a statute that says, we, the statute, want you to devise a rule that has people who are hostile to us, the statute? It's irrational. You see? It's hostile.
I guess
So-
I've lost you on that one.
Okay, they had 3 people who thought there was no medical benefit to marijuana whatsoever. And so how could they vote for having a debilitating condition when they don't think it has any benefit at all? That's contrary to any administrative rule, which is supposed to advance the purpose of the statute.
Maybe, Brian, you need to be clear about what you're talking about.
Oh, you don't know about any of this?
Well, I know about in the past that it was considered several years ago, but I
Just
guess
recently.
I don't, I'm not familiar with the statute or how people are chosen. I didn't think people were chosen based on their, some predetermined outcome.
Yeah, well, what happened was the previous administrative rules for the process were terribly flawed, and as Brian was alluding to, there was a panel that would be selected, and what happened with both times PTSD was considered before, there was a panel of 3 advocates and then 3 unwavering opponents to medical marijuana in general. And then that left Grant Higginson in the uncomfortable position of siding with the opponents.
What do the rules say?
Well,
you guys
they
wrote
got
the rules,
changed.
that's the idea.
Yeah.
But I'm asking what they say.
Well, they were very vague about exactly who makes the decision. The panel itself doesn't make the decision by a vote, they make the recommendation, which basically put it at the time in Grant Higginson's position. We revised those because of those flaws this past year. They went into effect January 1st. And I think that the new rules, I was also on the Rules Advisory Committee, and the ACMM also provided advice too. I think that the new rules were successful in improving some aspects of the process, but it fell short of adding explicit protections against bias, prejudice, and conflict of interest, which I believe it was legal counsel or Gail Shibley that decided that we shouldn't add those protections. And that was pretty much the most important part of the whole rule change, was to make sure that there was an unbiased decision. But there were some other improvements that were made. And the reason that PTSD is going to the legislature is because although we feel the rules have been improved, we're not confident enough with both the language of the rule and with the history of way of the agency has viewed it in the past. We didn't feel confident enough to submit PTSD administratively again, and the vets and other PTSD sufferers just couldn't wait any longer for a disappointing process. So that's why it's going to the legislature this year. But we would like to have the opportunity to test the new rules. We just want to, ideally it would be nice if the rules were tighter to provide explicit protections against bias, prejudice, and conflict of interest. But we would also like to see the spirit of the rule and the spirit of this program serving patients who medically qualify for cannabis in that spirit of fairness.
Me and Todd disagree with this, and we always have. I don't think the rule's been improved at all. I think the rule is designed to short circuit a denial. And all it did was take out the whole panel and put one state agency officer in charge of making the decision. It's going to be the same decision no matter what. What it doesn't have are advocates in the process who advocate, either doctors or users or people who have used it and appreciated it, who can tell what's phony and what's real in terms of what works in medical marijuana and what doesn't.
So you want people who actually have an opinion. You told me you didn't want people who were biased. Now you're telling me you want people who are biased.
Hang on, please,
I'm confused.
Let me do this, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now understand something, please, let me do this. Let me understand something. An administrative rule is empowered by what's called an organic statute. By definition, the administrative rule has to be biased toward the statute. That's why it's created. You can't create administrative rules that are hostile or biased against the statute. the administrative rules are created determinedly to be biased towards the statute. That's what their purpose is.
You know what would be real, if you could put some of that down for me so I understand it. No, seriously, I don't understand. I'm getting confused between the issue of PTSD and the issue to the statute, which should be...
The process.
Which the process should be devoid of anything about any particular condition or outcome. It should be about the statute itself and how that gets implemented. And I'd be happy to look at some info about that. I think that's a different discussion than what does or doesn't happen with PTSD.
Sure. Yeah, I think I come at bias from a scientific perspective, and Brian's coming at it from a being consistent with the statute.
Yeah, no, I'm picking,
so,
and I don't understand. I just don't understand that. I'm not making a judgment one way or another.
Well, you can understand that a statute creates an agency and gives the agency authority to create administrative rules under the statute.
Yeah.
So you can understand that the statute would expect the agency rules to be consistent with the purpose of the statute. Statute wouldn't ask you to create a rule that's against it. It would only ask you to create a rule that promotes it. That's the whole idea.
Okay. Well, we have a few minutes left with.
That's why I only play
so,
on way around.
So we'll work on something interim and
yeah.
communicate that.
So we only have a couple minutes. Let me see if I can't summarize a couple things. One, it sounds like to me that renewing an effort to work on how we educate people and provide information sounds like is needed. I mean, people didn't know about some of the efforts, other people knew about it. Sounds like we could renew our efforts to work on education. Two, I think that there's an issue about input about fees. And one, you're going to have a great opportunity to give some direct input, and he'll have a seat at your table with Rep. Buckley. But two, I will look at how you can or can't communicate to the legislature about fees. And let's just figure this out. I don't understand why this is about providing information.
Mm-hmm.
That's a laudable goal. And I think any kind of policy should be made considering information. And obviously, you're charged with, you're a group that has a lot of knowledge and background about this program, and I value your input. Whether it gets taken or not is a different story. But certainly the opportunity to have that input, I'm going to try and figure out how we can get beyond the yes you can, no you can't, which it sounds like we're at. And let me see what I can do relatively quickly around that.
Good.
Okay?
Yeah.
And we'll figure out, Todd, I'll be in touch around that, because I'm confident we can work through that.
Good.
Brian is going to get me info on the organic nature of stuff.
I sure will. Do I have your email?
Bruce.goldberg@state.or.us. But you will promise me you'll dumb it down to my level.
Keep it simple.
Could I suggest that it's to
I will do that.
administration?
Okay.
I will promise.
You tell him that I don't think.
Okay. Yeah, and through the administrator on that too.
Yeah.
To Tawana as well.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And I wanted to get to, I know Alice and Jim have hands up.
Yeah,
And
sorry.
since we're almost out of time, I'll be as brief as I can. One of the things you pointed out, going back to our interaction with the lawmakers, we are still, this is cannabis. There's still a stigma out there, and we are not well received. So that's part of the problem, and I want to give you a quick example. In 2006, when Senate Bill 1085 went into effect, and we had the limitations of plants being no taller than 12 inches and no wider than 12 inches tall. We tried to change that. I went in to talk to Senator Morissette. Morissette sent me back to talk to the ACMM. The ACMM sent me back to the legislature sent me back to the ACMM. Our attorney, Brian Michaels, and Mr. Clark, basically wrote a change for the administrative rule. It's still in limbo. So that's part of our problem too. And the last thing and final thing, at what point are we going to start considering and trusting our physicians all around the state? Why do we still have them under these insane restrictions, which would solve a lot of these other problems if we let doctors be doctors with their patients in the rooms, the examining rooms, and allow the government to remove itself? Because right now, the science is emerging. Every day we hear more and more about the benefits and efficacy of medical cannabis. Science is science regardless of where the research in the world is conducted. We have a lot of really good, sound scientific evidence that shows that it can treat so much more than this limited list of qualifying conditions that we currently have. You are a physician. Would you like to be told that your patient is not legally, by statute, allowed to use alder bark for acne because it's not gone through this bureaucratic process? And I mean, as a physician, I would imagine that would be rather a daunting challenge. You're supposed to go treat and help people, first do no harm sort of thing, and yet you're told by a government agency that because the information and scientific research available is not satisfactory to them, then no, you can't.
Well, actually, physicians do that every day. With, the FDA comes out with a list of conditions for which certain drugs are treated for, and physicians every day are faced with on-label, off-label decisions, dosing decisions, and complying with that. So I think that physicians operate within the regulatory framework that's provided. I hear what you're saying. I mean, there's a regulatory framework for this program. We've got to figure out, it's got a statute, we've got to figure out how to deal with that. But I think physicians are used to doing that. I certainly have been.
When there is overwhelming evidence, this is not a drug that is manufactured. This is a natural herbal alternative to those very medications. It has a much longer history than many of these manufactured drugs that are currently on the list that you described. So there's a difference in this, that it's not a drug, it's
PTSD is a perfect
Yes.
example.
I hear you,
and
but
depression and anxiety and
But it seems to me that, you're on one hand, you would like this to be considered a medicine
More
like other
broadly,
medicine.
yeah.
But on the other hand, what you're telling me is you really don't. You want it to be outside of that sort of regulatory framework. So I guess
No. What I'm asking is that we take a look at the narrow list of qualifying conditions versus what we know cannabis is good for. That's not exactly the same scenario. I am saying that we need to allow our doctors to be able to recommend this particular treatment, this therapy, in a more broad sense and remove these specific restrictions unless research and science tells us that it's absolutely contradictory to be used in treating a particular condition.
Jim will have the last word here.
Because this kind of pertains to, the OHA and particularly the CCOs, I've been following them.
Well, you're at a lot of the meetings.
And by the way, you do yourself a disservice by not telling everybody how good of a harp player you are.
That's for another time.
But anyhow, since the CCOs are going to be based on a long-time commitment to see how well they bring down the price of health care by caring for people over long periods of time, I would only think that through the use of something like cannabis, which has a very high and proven proficiency in taking people away from the narcos, the hydrocodones and those type of things. Some people are getting totally taken off of those. The price variation that would save the state and the CCOs, particularly if they looked into it from that part, might be a very good way to evaluate this from within the medical department so that it could be used and, save the state a lot of money. And I also kind of wonder, since you are the head of the OHA and the CCOs, is how can that influence, create a information going back, let's say, to the OMB, where we know that a lot of physicians, unless they're under their private practice and choose to do so themselves, don't get these letters stating, if you recommend cannabis, we're going to not allow you to recommend prescribed medicine.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch, didn't totally understand that last piece.
There are physicians, and a lot more than you, who are getting letters from the OMB, or from, if they're working particularly for what I call big box medical organizations, like Kaiser, Providence, OHSU, who I owe my life to. And they're being told, if you're going to recommend cannabis, then we're not going to allow you to prescribe DEA medicine.
Absolutely.
They're basically being put in this kind of hidden fog of a blackmail, which is creating their decision, which is should be strictly a patient-physician concept, to treat that person or at least make that recommendation.
Even though the feds have backed off, the feds say if you're registered in a state program, you can be on their pain contract, get your pain meds and use medical marijuana. That from a couple of years ago or more. Since then, more and more patients are being told choose. And I have a letter from a woman who's died. She's done.
Jim's talking about doctors, not patients.
Right, I'm talking about
confused.
It's the same issue.
It's the same issue.
They're being told you can't have your pain meds if you're going to use medical
That's
marijuana.
the patient
Choose.
side.
And a lot of them are being cut off without being weaned, and that's what drives me crazy. Sorry, you can't have it anymore right now. That's happening all over the city.
Yes, it is.
I could get examples to you if you need them. Have it.
And we are, a state that is so far ahead of everybody else. And we do want the CCO and Governor Kitzhoffer's plan to work because it's an excellent plan. So if we kind of cover over probably one of the biggest abilities that we have to save money, although you're definitely going to have to like farm over it, it seems like it's kind of one of those things we've got to, the Oregon Health Association should be maybe saying to the OMB, or to whoever it is, at least at the state level, to why are you sending these type of letters out? I have a friend who was a physician in this area. Todd knows him for a long time. He's now gone. But when he was in Baghdad during the time that his medical license expired, he had an Oregon medical license, and he was also registered in the state of California. State of California, personal okay or whatever, just automatically re-upped him because he was in the National Guard. The Oregon Medical Board actually sent him a letter that they were concerned about the number of scripts he had signed, and therefore they wanted him to go through this process, and he got no professional courtesy. So I know that's happened personally, and I've heard this too many times, particularly from physicians who are being scared out of helping people because, of course, of their own livelihood. And I think that's something that really the Oregon Health Association needs to kind of look into and see where is the root of this problem.
Well, you can see we have a lot of important issues on our
Yeah,
minds,
that's
and,
right.
and we only got through a few of them, so.
No, but I'll come back.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I will get an answer about some of the input around fees pretty quickly, because I think time's of the essence in that, given the legislature meeting and figuring out how to get some of that. So I'll get back to you, Tom, hopefully the next week or so.
Excellent.
And we'll work on communication and education. And I'm going to learn about the organic or inorganic nature of statute. Which I'm looking forward to. So on that note, I got to run, but I'll end where I started, which is thanks for all the input.
Thank you.
Thanks for showing up.
No, I can't? Oh, I'll get it off the web. I'll see if I can find it. No, I'm going to see if I can find it on the web. That's always my favorite thing.
Okay. The meeting's adjourned until we'll meet back at 1:10.
Is that not recorded? Yes.
Oh, okay.
We just barely put it over there.
Oh, I have one more. You mean of my handout?
Yes. Thank you.
Sure.
Make sure I got it here.
That means I'm on.
Well, we're just waiting to start the meeting from 10 minutes after
I'm
1.
not clear, I don't think that was discussed yet.
On,
Where are the
11.
briefs?
Big print.
Don't answer that.
Give another copy.
We'll know when he walks in.
Sure, we'll work around it. If it doesn't work, yep.
I left my plan at home.
You need a pen?
I was like, looking all over. Grab my answer.
All right, we're ready to resume the afternoon session. So we're expecting Representative Buckley to come here for 15 minutes at about 1:15, but we'll work around it just in case he's late or something. But anyway, we'll move along. We can decide our next meeting date and time, if people are ready to do that. We usually go somewhere out of the area of this area. And there's...
It's June, wow.
Yeah, it's going to be June, and there's been a lot of expression to bring it back down to Medford or Ashland. There's also Stormy also, well, she's not on the committee next time, but she expressed Ontario would be a good place to go too. But if we haven't been in Medford in 4 years?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Time to go out and see James again.
So does anyone want to share any ideas of location for a June meeting?
Medford works.
I figured it's over.
Well, of course.
Is everyone good with Medford, or is there any other suggestions?
Albany.
Okay.
All right. As far out as you can get it.
Okay.
And what day?
Any dates you have in mind? Any non-dates?
I'm open.
Okay.
The only time in June that works for me is the week of the 10th. Because soon thereafter, or up to the 18th. Soon thereafter, I'm gone the rest of the month.
I have to do the early part of June.
What's that?
Earlier part of June for me.
Yeah, same.
Okay. And Tawana's no Fridays for you, or?
No, I can do Fridays.
Oh, okay.
I work 8 hours here.
Okay.
But
And
that's Aaron.
is Fridays generally good for your office and for your staff in
Yeah,
general?
that Friday is fine.
Yeah.
She can stay over the weekend.
It's better than Mondays. I don't like doing Mondays.
Okay, so that would be Friday the 7th?
I can only do it at the beginning of the week of the 10th.
Okay.
Just that week and a couple of days into the next week.
Does the 14th work for you, Friday?
Friday the 14th works for me.
Friday the
Others?
14th.
I'm great.
Great. All right, so all in favor of shooting for Friday the June 14th in Medford Ashland area?
We're all there.
All in favor?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Can we start at 11 and end a little later? That way the drive would be easier for some of us.
That'd be great.
It's not gonna help me at all.
Administratively, we gotta think about the hours in the day to pay the staff. So, he's leaving later, we have to pay overtime if it goes past 5 by the time they return home.
I know, he said that for us.
You're worth it.
And there's...
You're worth it.
I don't get money. The state just get my time.
And there's travel
My staff.
reimbursement for staying over the night before, too.
Right.
Yeah, that works. 14.
It's a long
Travel
drive home,
reimbursement,
after, I'll tell you that.
Oh,
All right, so we'll just get going with the agenda until Representative Buckley graces us with
Do
his
you
presence.
want to introduce Dave also?
Oh,
Right.
well, this is Dave, our interim administrator. Permanent position is program manager of the drinking water program.
Yep.
Would you like to extend your introduction?
Sure, thank you, yeah, I appreciate it. Well, yeah, again, I'm Dave Leland, so I have the honor of serving as interim center administrator while the recruitment's going on, which I understand it is, that there are some applications, that's moving on ahead. And, you know, pretty much the deal was that this is likely for a session, you know, because we're right in the middle of legislative session, and national recruitment is challenging, to say the least, particularly when you're finishing up, when the division's finishing up recruitment for one of the other centers. So the 3 centers that we have that you see in your handout, you know, 2 of us are in right now, but we're getting pretty close on the second one, and then applications are received on this one. So, but I've been running the drinking water program, which is one of the other 6 programs in the center. So this is one, and there's 5 others. And I've been really running the drinking water program almost forever. So I have a pretty good grasp of regulatory things and running programs and, you know, budget and finances and all that sort of thing, which I'm really happy to help you guys out with as much as I can during this interim assignment. And so basically, you know, my priorities are going to be 1, you know, run the programs, 2, get through the session, 3, bring the current budget period to a close, which, as you probably all know, ends in end of June, and then getting all the programs set up with the legislatively approved budget for the next biennium. So I hope to accomplish that, and at the same time have the opportunity to check in with you folks as well. So I think maybe I would just mention that, you know, I was very happy to be here today, and did manage to get here for Bruce's thing, which was my goal, because I had a pre-scheduled water conference presentation appearance at 8 o'clock this morning, so I was hustling. Anyway, I really appreciated listening to the debate dialogue. It was very helpful, and I think, as Todd probably mentioned earlier, he and I met last month, and so Todd was able to brief me on a lot of the issues concerns, that's really helpful. And guess who's going to get the assignments from Bruce that he got today? It's interim. Yeah, it's interim. So already happened as expected. So that's great. So beyond that, I think I would just say, look, tell us what you need. I can help work with the program on, if you want to do some investigating on the fee thing, sort of get sort of the background information together. We're happy to do that. You've seen, some of the kind of standard financial reports, and if there's other things you need, we actually do have pretty good program support manager support now in Jeff Carter. So keep in mind, he supports 6 programs, so he's very good. He is super good, and in fact, the little sort of 2-pager front and back thing, the month-by-month thing, that is actually something he designed that we use for every single program and every single fund source within our center. So, and there's a lot of them. There's probably 100 different fund sources among those 6 programs with all the federal grants and fees for service and all those sorts of things. So it's a big job and very complex. But we can get you more. That's kind of high level. So happy to work with Todd.
The one thing he asked, you want to ask?
Actually, we will, but I saw that Representative Buckley has made it here. So, but we can return to you because I understand you want to talk a little bit more about fees and budget in more detail and such, which is actually what Representative Buckley is here to do as well.
You're welcome. I kept it warm.
Thanks for coming, Representative Buckley. It's a nice switch of roles here.
Mr. Chair, members of the advisory. Representative Peter Buckley from South Adams County. Thank you for inviting me over today. Thank you for doing the work that you do for the program. I've been in discussion with Laird on many occasions about the impact of the fee changes that went into effect after the 2011 session. I came today just basically to encourage you to please give us a proposal to make the fees more progressive, make the fees work for low-income Oregonians. It's never the intention of the legislature to remove low-income Oregonians from the medical marijuana program. I could go into sordid details how he ended up where he ended up, but I won't. It's best not to, I think. But I will just summarize it by saying that we made a agreement on the overall human services budget, and this was part of the agreement was changing the fee structure for the medical marijuana program. In doing so, if it helps at all, in doing so, we're able to maintain adequate funding levels for programs for seniors and people with disabilities that made a huge difference in people's lives. So on behalf of the legislature, I'll apologize for the stress undergone by members of the patients in the medical marijuana program, but I will say that I do think at least a greater good was served by the pain that people went through. And now it's an opportunity to remedy that back and make sure the fee structure can work for patients. So I would encourage you, please come forward with a proposal that we can consider as part of the budget this year.
Larry, what's the most useful time frame?
Tuesday, Wednesday, I think would be good this week. No.
We can do it.
The sooner the better, obviously. The subcommittee, the research subcommittee is just really now starting to kind of the nuts and bolts work of putting together the budget. So the earlier you get something, if you get something in this month, it can be part of their thought process for the rest of March and April when the major work's going to be done on the budget.
Well, I think most of us would have a pretty clear idea already what we'd say about it, so it wouldn't take long to get our input. So we'll just, at this point, I'd leave it between you and Todd.
Yeah, well, I guess first of all, maybe we would look at the problems of the last fee structure change, not the sausage factory aspect of it so much, but the impact on the poorest and lowest income patients. Number one, 39% of the population, of the cardholder population at the time of the fee increase, received paid $20 as opposed to the $100 for the regular fee. The other 1% was Social Security SSI patients who also got the same discount. So for 39% of the patient population and over 90% of the low-income discount patient population, their fees went up 500%. Second of all, the fee to designate somebody as a grower not only makes it difficult for the most disabled patients who are physically unable to grow for themselves. It adds an extra fee to them of $50. Not only that, but it also adds this financial aspect to a grower that didn't exist before, where the grower is still not able to be paid for their labor. So it further enhances the opportunity or incentive, legal or not, for diversion of medicine from where it's supposed to go to the patient. And given that, there's also there's been a historic problem between patient and grower relationships. They don't always work because they don't always understand each other's needs, and because sometimes there's less than illegal intentions on the grower or patient's part, but probably more on the growers. So when those relationships go bad, the patient needs a way to get out of that relationship, and paying $100 change fee often locks, especially the lowest income and most disabled patients, from getting out of that bad relationship and finding a grower who will do them right. So those are just kind of outlining some of the problems with the way the fee structure was. And both the ACMM and the Rules Advisory Committee, which I sat upon between when the legislative session and what the rule enactment, both bodies had recommended another fee structure that was much less damaging on the low-income disabled patients, but still was on track to generate the revenue that was needed. But we were told by either directly by the Ways and Means Committee or someone who's translating the intentions of the Ways and Means Committee that no, it doesn't matter what the Rules Advisory Committee says, it doesn't matter what the ACMM says, this is the way we wanted the fee structure. And so that not only made us feel disempowered, but it further excluded our statutory responsibility to provide annual input on the fee structure. So that's my concern.
Could you send me the proposals that were developed? I never saw them.
Be happy to. We actually sent, communicated with all the members individually of the Ways and Means Committee, as well as through the committee staff as well, but we received no response from anybody individually or as a group. And we felt we had the statutory obligation to advise you on the fee structure, and there's also a statutory obligation for agencies to cooperate with us to provide that kind of advice. So it's not just that our personal feelings got hurt, but I think by not receiving our input that the most vulnerable patients in the program, or let alone the state, got the short end of it.
I just
Yes.
another thing I wanted to add was that with this alternate proposed structure, there were administrative hearings, which was a bunch of money wasted by the OMMP, through no fault of their own, was my understanding, going from city to city, 3 different cities, having to pay staff, and what a waste when there was no intention of these rules ever being passed.
Well, let's make use of this. Let's make use of the proposals that were developed so we don't waste that money.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a good proposal.
There were a couple things that happened. When we found out about the proposed increase, it was almost by accident. It had pretty much taken place. Barry Cast admitted in a tape meeting that he deliberately withheld the information from us that this was happening. It just blew me away. He admitted this. And there was another thing that we tried, and it was all over by the time we even heard about it. That was really disheartening. I felt why bother, you know? The other thing that we tried to do, and in the hearing, the waste money on the hearings, repeatedly people asked for a sunset clause. And what we heard back from the hearings officers is it isn't gonna happen. And it felt, when we got those answers back, 78 people sent in testimony, and I read every one of them, and several people asked for a sunset clause, and all of them said the same thing, no. It was like, this is the way it's gonna be, and I don't even know why they had the hearings. It was a huge waste of money and people's time. But that is what happened. I mean, we didn't know, we deliberately were kept from knowing.
Against it, we had a split in Oregon House for the first time in Oregon's history. 30 Democrats, 30 Republicans. Everything in the budget was negotiated to the point that, so I can't blame staff, it's not staff's fault. When an agreement was made, and it was a torturous process, again, my apologies for a negative impact on any of you involved or the people that you care about. When an agreement was made, it literally could not be changed once that agreement was made and the budget was passed. We simply did not have the ability to do that without unraveling a whole series of agreements.
Had we had an opportunity for some input,
Yep.
things might have been different, but it was a deliberate decision. Very sad.
The legislature is no longer tied, and I'm here today to ask for the proposals to be sent so I can see them personally and get them into the process.
You got them.
Very good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
All right. Perhaps, yes? Perhaps maybe we could ask David back up.
And your 60 now.
I will always yield to that. And you don't need 30 years of experience. So, yeah, well, let me just say, gosh, yeah, it did happen fast. And the reason I know about it is suddenly, well, we went into the session in drinking water, finding out in the governor's recommended budget then that they're taking the general fund out of the drinking water program, which is the match for all the federal money. And there's supposed to be some sort of user fee on water suppliers, which of course water suppliers were not thrilled about. And and then it was literally at 11:59, and all of a sudden the general fund was replaced mostly with medical marijuana, which you'll see in the handout. I have Jeff list out the 7 programs and the amounts, so I'm sure you guys know this, but I thought it was just included. So,
What handout are you referring to?
oh, it's this one that looks like that.
Okay.
Yeah, looks like that.
Yeah, Center for Health Protection.
And just a few things in there. You've seen the box charts and just kind of reviewing the organization just briefly, and I think it's towards the back there. But I did include that. I didn't know if everybody had all that, but that's what the sort of budget. So it'll be very interesting. So I think you heard from the representative. They're kind of interested in hearing your thoughts. And there's your entree, I guess, that you're looking for, right? Yeah.
Good. And did you bring any information pertaining to? I know we discussed that there's no that we can't reduce the fees or change administrative rules while legislature's in session. So I know it'll be some time before we can actually look at doing it administratively. But
here's what I would suggest: get Representative Buckley what he wants.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it too, by the way. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see that as well. So get him what he wants. If you have a need while you're doing that for like some up-to-date facts and figures or something, let us know. Right? We'll help with that part. And then let's when we come back together in June after you've had some feedback from the representative and see what happens there. When you come back in June, let's I would offer that, hey, let's kind of start that discussion. because legislatural adjourn, should be in June, and not too much after that. And then, we've got an opening between then and February when the short session starts. But that lasts about a month, the short session. So it seems like that's pretty good. The timing's pretty good, and you have an entree right now. Which is, I think, very helpful from the legislative standpoint.
So what we need now is information from you guys so that we can formulate something and give it to.
Again, let us know what you need. I think he was asking you to kind of recycle what you put together before. And so if you need some additional facts and stuff brought up to date or something, let us know what that is.
Send that to me.
Yeah.
And I'll move it through.
Okay, yeah, and
I think I might still have it all.
Well, there's that proposal. We also need kind of the current financial information. So we talked earlier this morning about projected revenue and budget and stuff. It's some of the stuff that Chris Grorud was doing so well, a couple of years ago, is just what we need. So a good projected revenue and income, plus a little bit of analysis of.
So we have something we can look at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Good.
I wrote it down.
Good. All right. Good. Excellent.
Okay.
Jim?
Earlier during this legislative session, I sat in on a vegetarian meeting where the head of the panel said that the state of Oregon received $16.7 billion for Oregon's budget this year, and that 51% of it was earmarked to OHA.
Oh, yeah. OHA is healthcare.
Right.
That's the giant animal in the OHA.
So I'm kind of wondering, do you have the means to, tap into that budget to create, how do we figure out how much the ACMM will get from that, or does it get it at all?
It doesn't. The medical marijuana program is entirely supported by kids. 100%.
Statute. Okay.
Brian? I have questions unrelated to anything you've been asked before. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I may have to get that, but I'm ready.
People say that to me.
Yeah. I don't mind saying it either. I mean it.
They seem to
And
enjoy
I mean
it.
A lot of things.
If I understand it, you were on the drinking water portion of this, right?
Right. Yeah.
You guys, according to this sheet right here on the back of the back sheet, have an advisory committee.
Yes, we do.
Now, is it made up of citizens like this advisory committee?
Well, thank you for asking.
I don't get that a lot.
Yeah, well, actually, I would have covered that. If you guys wanted to add some other things, but I'd rather answer your question. Okay, so the Drinking Water Advisory Committee, and you can look in, it's statutory, like yours is, so there's a statute that spells out who's on it. It's ORS 448. And it's, I forget the chapter, but you'll run into it fast. It's not that long, but a 448 statute is not that long. It's titled Drinking Water Advisory Committee, so you can't miss it. And basically, it has a combination of sort of organizational membership and sort of public both. So like it will say for the various seats on the committee, it'll say like cities. Well, we happen to kind of work through the League of Cities, of course. It's let them nominate, and then again, our administrator appoint, kind of like here. So we kind of have organizations to work with on drinking water, but not all together. And in fact, we have one seat for environmental advocacy groups. Gosh, I've been after Oregon Environmental Council for years. It's 4 meetings a year. It seems like, but people only have so much bandwidth. So, but actually, I'm getting somebody from Oregon Environmental Council finally.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so I did something for them, they do something for me, I guess. But, so you can kind of look at that statute and see who the representatives are. But they're drinking water interests, for the most, well, everybody's about safe drinking water. So it's engineers, it's cities, it's privately owned utilities, it's special districts, it's environmental groups, it's cross connection and backflow specialists, and whatnot.
So I'm gathering from what you're saying to me that you value the opinion of those who are on the advisory.
Absolutely.
And,
They also serve as our rules advisory committee too.
And do they, does what they say have any force of law, or is it just what you
Just
decide?
It's written exactly, I would say you'll find it written almost exactly the way yours is. Because there's kind of standard statutory language for advisory committees. It's very standard. So we have a radiation protection advisory committee. And I've been to that one. I just got to get in my new capacity.
So you find that the input from that advisory committee ends up being seen in the final product?
Yeah, for the most part, not always. And, we always, if there's something we can't do or choose not to, we'll tell them why. And so we do, on occasion, agree to disagree.
Okay, well,
that's okay.
Understandable. Humans do.
Sometimes that happens.
But a person on the committee would feel like they had input that was heard and processed and put into the process to achieve a result.
You can talk to some of them because the roster is on our website.
There you go.
You can talk to some of them.
And would you say that was typically how these other advisory committees run?
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
So as you might guess, I'm interested in things working that way.
Yes, so are we. We just really haven't found that to be the case here, so I was curious if it was this way in all the other committees or just this one.
No, but I just let me give you some newbie observations. You tell me if I'm sort of right or wrong. In the other programs, I don't think we have the same kind of swirl of political issues and interests around it.
Water's
Drinking
water.
There's plenty of tension in drinking water, but basically everybody's about safe drinking water.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's.
Doesn't never have the stigma that it does.
So this is very interesting. Yeah.
All right, so in the interest of time, we've got 20 minutes with a few more agenda items.
Thank you.
But thank you so
Very
much.
much.
So we're on to subcommittee reports, and then Outreach has a proposal to discuss, and then we have officer elections for chair and vice chair. So I'll just start. I submitted a written report, both report from the chair as well as the research and safety committee. And my only chair report is regarding, I just wanted to summarize my meeting with David Leland. And so that can all be found on the written report, so I probably won't use much more time to discuss that. And then on the Horticulture Research and Safety Committee, we've been holding off on new projects, mainly because we wanted to receive better direction from our director regarding how we can best advise him. And we all know there's been a frustration of lack of response to our hard work. So we wanted to hold off on those new projects. But I do have one nomination. I emailed the committee the CV for Rigel Christian. He's an OHSU student. He's a founder of the Medical Informatics Interest Group at OHSU and on the steering committee for access to medicines, Farm Free, on American Student Association. He got his master's in public health from Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School. His His thesis was around cancer, gene expression, and he also has a certificate in healthcare disparities and inequalities. So the CV I sent was Rigel Christian, but he had recently changed his name legally to Rigel Hope. So I will be therefore moving to appoint Rigel Hope as a member of the Horticulture Research and Safety Committee.
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Rigel Hope is now a member of the Horticulture Research and Safety Committee. And that's all I have. And so I'll turn it on over to Sandy, who can give the outreach report as well as lead that into your proposal.
I have one more of these available if anybody wants it. At the last meeting, we had a charge to try and get our old PowerPoint presentation up and running. It hasn't been as easy as it would seem. The guy who made it had his computer crash, and it's very outdated. It took a long time. First, Joanna made the presentation in 2008 to the Governor's Council on Alcohol and Drugs, and then in August, then we tweaked that and added more stuff, and we put the presentation together in 2009. So you would know right away it was pretty outdated. I don't think it was ever really used, hardly at all. It seemed like a good idea, but it just didn't work out that way. I think it would be good to have, but I think it would be something, honestly, that rather than have it be a product of the ACMM, which is always going to have to be approved, anything we do is going to have to be approved and it takes months for anything to happen, is that I would just be willing to take the PowerPoint that exists and update it on a personal level and make it available to anybody, not just the ACM, who wanted to use it. Now, it wouldn't have OMMP approval, or it wouldn't have ACMM approval, but I'll tell you, it'd be a lot easier to use. And I would be willing to offer that service to the committee if you think that's a good idea. If you want to do the other thing and muddle through getting the other thing, I don't really think I want to be involved. It's just, we did so much work on it before, not to have it go anywhere. So I think I would invite discussion right now about how you feel about this before I move on with it.
As a clinic director, I would feel comfortable with that. I know that Mama is really big on the educational aspect, and how many times I have to say the same thing over and over again. It would be lovely to have a PowerPoint presentation, just say it. And I have faith that you're telling people the same things as we are.
Yeah, so we can expand more than we can say, for example, cannabis is used in many forms.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. No.
And so I would be willing to put something together between now and next meeting and bring it to the meeting, and if I will send it to you in email, and you can say you like it or don't, you can make suggestions, I'll change it, and I would be happy to give up the ownership or whatever to anybody who wants to use it. And then, if you decide you like what's done, you can make little CDs, and it's so easy. So, if you want to do that, maybe somebody should make a motion.
I move that we tell Sandy to do that.
I second that motion.
Okay, that makes me feel good, because I spent a lot of time trying to track down the old one, and even the newest version was kind of a mess compared to what things are now. Okay, now more importantly for me.
We had a second.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we already.
Okay, a second. Is that good enough motion for you for the minutes?
Second by Dr. Funk.
No.
Oh, for doing what Sandy said.
Ben.
And seconded by Alex.
Okay. Do we want to phrase that at all?
Yeah, that was good.
Okay, all right.
That's good.
All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Okay. Unfortunately for you out there, you don't have a copy of the cover letter that is currently going out with the new OMMP ID cards. As you all might remember, when you got your ID card, it came with a thick packet which had a copy of a whole bunch of other stuff. I questioned in the past why this packet had to be sent out with every renewal application. And I was told that that's the way the system was set up, that there wasn't any way to divide new and return. So everybody got this thick packet, which cost a lot of money to print, a lot of money to send out. Then all of a sudden, without warning, I got my renewal card. And with it, I only had one letter. It's just a one-page letter. It looked like this. It's really, it's even a short letter. And that was it. On this letter, there's no web page. It tells nowhere where you can get a copy of the law. It's not even formatted properly. Now, in the past, we had always bought these kinds of changes through us just to put our input. So I was really surprised. And actually, I'll tell you what I thought. They know who I am, so they sent me this really quick letter. But no, that doesn't make any sense. Oh, they're trying to save money and they're gonna steal it. That's my other side. So I called Aaron and I said, no, that's not what happened. It just kind of happened. I said, he thought we ran it through us. I said, Aaron, if nothing in here, if I didn't even read this letter, the formatting alone, I guarantee you I never saw this letter before. So right away, I sent my suggestions off, and then we ran it through the committee, and we came up with another letter that we're going to present to the OMMP administration today. And it's got a lot of changes in there. It will have the Oregon website, the OMMP website on it. And in that regard, we have a very strong advocate for making the OMMP website something like OHA/OMMP. So you don't have to write in what the thing is now at a type that's the size of the other writing. It won't even fit in one line. It laps over. It's so complicated, and because you get it in a letter where you can't click on it and cut and paste, you have to type this all in there. It's horrible. So what we would really like to see happen, Aaron, is you have, like the Secretary of State's office, they have a short one and it switches to that. That can't be complicated.
I think they have that currently. It's health.oregon/mm, and then it redirects, but every so often that redirect breaks. But yeah, we don't have control of that, but there is, because you're right, that address is, you can read that to someone on the phone, it's taking half an hour. But that's the address they've given us, but I know there is a redirect. I'm not sure if we can tell them what we'd like it to be, but I do believe health.oregon/mm still will get a person to the website, which is sort of smaller.
Can we send out a request from the OMMP, from the ACMM? Okay, then that would be part of my proposal.
That would be helpful.
And we've added several other things. You all have it in front of me. Do I need to read it all? Everybody's had a chance to read it. So this is what I think we should forward. Probably we're going to have to talk about it and get back and forth. The font is so big that it takes up one page, so by the time you put the header and the bottom part out, you might have to remove the font size. But I think we spent a lot of time working on this. Several people were involved, and I'm pleased with it. So this is what we'd like to submit to you, and of course I'm going to need a motion to submit this to you for a change in the ID cover letter for new and return patients.
I make the motion to approve that.
Second.
And so that you know, the DHS has a really great agency that reviews documents and forms, and we've recently given them all of our application materials to say, please look at this, take an outside look, tell us how we can improve these, because we're just so involved in this. I don't think it sometimes helps to have outside eyes like your own, but they're really also really good at formatting. So whatever we get from you, we'd like to also, once we're comfortable with them, once our I don't know how much of this is really terribly controversial. We need to get legal.
I expect that.
But they're really good at they help with the handbook to just they know how to focus on certain things and sort of deal with font sizes. So if you're okay with that, we'd like to send that to them.
Yeah.
For their input. So, they're experts in this and they're really good.
I have wrong. We just need to get their information. I don't care what it looks like.
Right. No, that's, we're 100%.
Have we voted on
Nope.
No, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
That's fine, we have discussion. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion on it? Maybe including that friendly amendment to see what they could do about shortening the URL?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, there's one other thing on my report. The other thing is the renewal packet. They started sending out a new renewal packet. We were not informed about it. And I just, when it came through our clinic, I saw it. You've probably all seen it. It's all typed up. It's not a very good form. And I think they're also going to be working on that. And we would like to be involved in that process when you get ready to look at the renewal form. If maybe if you could even send it out. People who aren't a patient or aren't in a clinic may not have ever seen that are on the ACMM.
So remember when we were, the database, when we were updating the database, and I guess when we discussed it at that time, we talked about the things that were changing with the database, and our renewal packets were going to be automatically printed out from there. And we gave an example at that time.
Yeah, it's not, I'm not saying, I love the new idea. It's just, a lot of patients, my experience is they don't even know what it is. Even when we tell them, if you got this, bring it with you, they show up without it. And so I don't think a lot of patients understand that that is their new application form. And I just would like to have a little bit of input on that, our committee, so we can be sure that it's clear to the patients what's going on. Even my own clinic people didn't understand what was going on at first.
And just to give you some context, I mean, we've gotten pushed from the other side to say, why are you sending these out? Why don't you just send a postcard out? That's what every agency does. Just send them a postcard with the web address. And we try to say, we would like to be a little bit more customer service oriented.
Well, it makes it easier for you guys too. A lot easier. You don't have to type all that stuff in again.
Yeah, but then the formatting doesn't necessarily look like we'd like it to. We're pretty much dependent on computer folks to do this for us. Even when we get the go-ahead with this, it's going to take a while. I know that's frustrating, but we don't have a person, that's just at our disposal. Once they stop that database thing, yeah, it's always time, right?
This, you can explain through that. This cover letter in our database, we can't go in there and just fix it like we used to.
Oh, I know, Erin explained, it's gonna take a while.
Yes.
But I also know that this is horrible. And I think it's irresponsible of the program to send something like this out to a new patient who has no idea what the law is. Their doctor signed, the doctor didn't know the law, and they're legal. And they have no way, they don't even know where to get a copy of the law from this letter. And the other thing that nobody really knows is that you can just ask for a copy of the law and it will be sent to you for free. That's why the wording in there says a free copy of the law. You might want to take that out, I thought. But I just think it's so important that people, felony is really serious.
Ben?
Yeah, just a clarification question before we go, is that do any written documents that go out to patients or caregivers or growers that go out do we review those ever? Or does it come to us first, or does it just goes out there and then the difficulty to change it? It seems like when things go out in the world and you implement, the change is very time consumptive to change it, but on the front end, especially if it involves other departments, which it always does, on the front end, is it much easier to do it on the front end, submit it and get it right the first time? And if that's the case, is there a standing rule that every time something, that the paperwork goes out to the public, that we have an opportunity to review that, or is that not allowed?
It's not a rule, it was certainly our intention, and it's our recollection that we did, that I'm not standing by that.
But that's what we practice, everything that the correspondence that I always, we need to run this past ACM.
That's always our first stop.
That's the first
So
thing.
we first go.
Because you guys would know how to communicate to the clients and what's needed then better than we will. But then we run it back communications to review it as well. But some of these documents was established before my time, and some things I had not even looked at, and I tried to go back through a lot of the correspondence when I came on board. And And in the new system was implemented, we were trying to make sure that we had current documents and so forth. And I believe we were running, we had a big stack that we ran through the committee.
All right, so we should probably vote on the motion.
Okay.
If you all remember what it was. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion passes. Do you have more reporting?
Oh, that's it.
Okay,
Oh,
great.
well, we still have to pick members.
Oh, okay.
You've already done it. Do I nominate now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to re-nominate everybody who's on the committee now, and we'll do that part first.
Second.
Do you have a list?
I do it, but I don't have it here. Everybody who's on it, raise your hand. I know Kristen and Sarah. Okay, Lori, Jennifer Alexander.
Kelsey?
Yeah.
Kelsey
Lori
Hopkins.
isn't here. I was, yeah. So
Kristen
I will
Gustafson.
submit all those names. Everybody who is currently on there, Ben is on there. Okay, so.
Jennifer?
All right. One second.
I'll say it.
Okay. All in favor of reappointing all the current and past members? Not all the past members, all the current members. In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes.
Chair, I'd like to nominate a person for chair. Is now the right time?
We are moving on
Not
to that.
chair of the ACM, of the committee, outreach.
Sure.
Okay, I would like to nominate Ben. I think he's willing to do the work, and that's what it takes.
Second, any discussion? Well, in my experience with Ben, he will follow through and do a good job. So, yeah. All in favor of Ben as chair of the outreach committee? Aye. Motion passes. So we only have a few people signed up for the public comments, so we are going to be okay going a little bit over 2 with our last agenda item, which is appointing the chair and vice chair of the ACMM. And since I'm an eligible nominee for chair, and since Jim has passed on being reappointed as vice chair, correct?
How are you ineligible? What are you talking about?
Oh.
What do you mean you're ineligible?
No, I'm eligible.
Oh, eligible.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you get the jump.
So for this agenda item, I'm going to pass the gavel to the vice chair, and you did say that you're not going to seek a reappointment for vice chair.
Right, well, I believe my term ends before a full term of being vice chair would end, so.
I just said everybody's term ends at the end of the year, so yours is the same as everybody else.
But the officer terms are from spring to spring, or from March to March.
Oh, I see what you mean.
But it doesn't say in our bylaws that the chair has to be a member of the ACMM. So, Jim would be eligible.
Yeah, he's
You would still be eligible, so you can be in the pool if you want.
I think we need to pass this on to some.
Who wants to do it now? Here's the problem. Who wants it?
So the gavel is to the vice chair for this.
Want to be vice chair? Cheryl wants to be vice chair.
Okay.
I nominate Cheryl. Did you want to be vice chair?
No, I was just going to make a nomination.
Are we doing vice chair now?
We could do a package deal, I think. Well, you're presiding, so you.
Okay, well, I would second, even as a presider for Cheryl, vice chair. Are there any discussion?
Looks like a vice chair to me.
Everybody say aye?
Aye. Okay, you've been drafted.
And so for chair, because you can't do it for yourself, right? Is that what you're saying?
It's
I
just
nominate Todd.
Then since I'm no longer the vice chair, or just a member now, I'll nominate now, or.
I'll second.
Excuse me. Second Sandy's nomination.
Okay.
Anybody else want to run? How about you, Dr. Allen? Do you have a nomination?
I was going to nominate Todd for the position, but somebody beat me to it.
Second? Any seconds? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so Todd, you're back. Congratulations. Congratulations to me. There you go.
Thanks, Jim.
Good. So we still haven't gotten our appointments to fill the 3 vacancies that are left by Dr. Cohen, Stormy, and
That's it.
who's the third? There was a-
You.
Oh, me, of course. So anyway, I anticipate we'll know by the next meeting. So
It would be nice to know before.
yeah.
It's late.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that although Stormy and Dr. Cohen's terms technically expired in December 31st, they are here in force as full members currently. So yeah, that means when Dr. Goldberg makes his appointments for those 3 positions.
Which 3?
Me.
Why you?
Alan. Well, because my term expired on the 31st of
We want to keep it.
the end of last year.
Oh, so you're not.
So the 3 of us are here in full
But
full
you're not
effect.
like the other 2. They're not expecting to return.
Right.
You're expecting to return.
Right. Right. So we hopefully we'll hear about.
Especially since he's chair.
Exactly. Okay. Anyway.
Make you an interim chair?
Okay,
gosh.
you know.
Put me in front of Clint Eastwood and see. All right. So that concludes our regular business. So we're going to move on to the public comments, which we have three people signed up, and we'll let those 3 go first, and then we're going to have Anthony Taylor, who's going to follow that up, and he can have all the time he wants until 2:30 to talk about. He wants to update us on the legislative stuff that affects the program. So we'll begin with Jean Adams and Claire Dalzell on deck. Dalzell. Okay. So yeah, feel free to take about 3 minutes or so, or more.
Well, I'll try to be real fast.
Okay.
Actually, I have 4 points. I'll try to go over real fast. Okay, number one, a recent issue of Spot, magazine for dog owners, had an article on medical marijuana for pets. And I just wonder, how does that fit in with our stuff here? Number 2, if recreational marijuana were legalized, what would happen to all of the people with bureaucratic jobs and regulatory and law enforcement and all of that stuff that's sort of wasteful? And then, number 3, I just wanted to draw your attention to these 2 books, which I think are very good. Your Brain on Food, Gary L. Wink, he did research on, he's a doctor and he did outstanding research on application of medical marijuana to Alzheimer's. And he's also mentioned in this book, Marijuana Gateway to Health. This was published in 2011. So if somebody doesn't know about these books, I just think they're very useful. Clint Werner and Gary L. Wink. And then, my main question is, I've read or heard about some kind of research programs that growers can get into, and I have a grower who is his plants are his children. He's just an outstanding cultivator and horticulturist. I'm sure he could grow anything, and I just wondered how he might get into some research program on the different strains or growing conditions that would be helpful. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, you can talk to me about research afterwards. I run a horticultural research program. So
I can talk about the dog issue. There's an article on that in Cannabis Connection a few years back that I wrote. And cannabis can be toxic to dogs. It's not a good idea to give it to them. And the big thing now. Everybody's bringing it up. If it works for people, it must work for dogs. It's not true. It causes horrible neurological problems. A lot of dogs are overdosing. Talk to the vets. They're saying way more dog overdoses. So just keep it away from your pets.
Although there was a research paper published just last week, a couple weeks ago, from a veterinarian. So that's, something to look
And
at.
I think if people were doing it medicinally, but unfortunately, there aren't the controls, and there are too many dogs just getting into it, just like toddlers eating cannabis brownies and that kind of thing. It's not safe.
Okay, so Claire Dalzell with Peke on deck.
Just to steal a moment, I carelessly dropped a shoulder camera in the black and maroon case between here and the Asian on the street. If anybody has something across it's a quick, but careless. My question was, on the ID cards, if one doesn't have a license, what kind of ID do you put on it? This OMMP, how do you ID if the person doesn't have a driver's license?
So are you asking why, I mean, they're called registration identification cards, but that's separate from your driver's license.
But my driver's license is on the card, so my question was, if somebody's not a driver.
That's not.
No.
ID card, passport, military ID.
Right, no, but my
require
license
them.
number is on my.
She's worried about the ID
Right,
registry
right.
card, having her driver's license on the
Right,
card. Is that what you're saying?
And if I didn't have a license, what would you be putting on that? Whatever ID I have.
We actually don't put that on your individual card. We have it recorded in the registry.
Because it's on my card.
It's on the card.
Yes.
Really?
And the other question was.
Let me see a card. I don't believe that to be true.
Might be just coincidence.
I love it. Everybody has their card on it. Where is your driver's license number?
Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know.
So
That is.
Yeah, mine is too.
Wow.
I never noticed that.
Thank you.
Yeah, everybody's got their card.
I know why. That was the unique identifier, so that would be tied to one person. So the reason why that was changed was because it was identified in our new system as a unique identifier. So especially if you have an Oregon ID, and then process it's a lot faster too.
And I think the question is, what if you didn't have an Oregon ID? We would put whatever government is.
Okay, that was
It's like everyone's got it.
Oh, okay, thanks. And then the other thing was, I know.
And yes, we all have our cards.
I love
This is a
that.
test.
Ryan, I noticed you didn't pull one out.
Well, I was a little confused.
Claire, you still have some time.
OMMP and OHP. Am I wrong in thinking our fees go toward, or the other programs, public health and OHP? Do my fees go toward that?
The Oregon Health Authority, we all used to be the Department of Human Services. Now it's been split into two branches, Department of Human Services and Oregon Health Authority. The Oregon Health Plan is a separate entity, and they don't get any of the monies that we dispense out to other groups. There's 7 other agencies that get an Oregon Health Plan, and it is not.
Oh, okay.
And the programs are all, not Oregon Health Authority programs, they're all public health division programs. So we support 6, and there's only a certain amount that was mandated for each of the programs, which is outlined in the handout. You can see those programs.
Because the reason I asked you, because I'm eligible for OHP, have been eligible for a couple of years, haven't gotten it yet. And I thought, well, if I'm contributing OHP and I would qualify for medical marijuana if I would continue to be eligible,
What it would do for you is get you a reduced fee.
Yeah, but I was just kind of curious, am I supporting a plan that I can't even get on?
It's not,
It's separate.
we don't support it, it's just a public health division program, and just those 6. Good question.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you, Jean. PK.
Well, thank you for having this. Get in touch with Senator Buckley with the proposals you have. We're doing our best.
Thank you guys for putting this out.
Thank you for bringing us to the world.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
All right, so that leaves Anthony Taylor is going to give us some information about the legislative bills affecting our program, and we'll have an opportunity to dialogue with him. And you have 16 minutes.
I'll try and keep it within those time frames. Just as a quick aside, this is what I woke up to Friday morning in my local newspaper. The conversation between a liberal arts small businesswoman and the sheriff, Jack Crabtree.
What would you read the headline first?
Should marijuana be legalized? Yes, no. At least they put the yes first. I have 10 copies here, and I think I'm going to run out before I get to the end of the line. And I really need one to look off of for myself, so if somebody would share. I'll share.
My memory's good.
Okay. Chairman. This is a just a quick report I put together, going over the bills that have been introduced into the legislature this session that may affect us. In the back, the last 3 pages is a chart that kind of sums everything up. It shows you, what the bill number is, who introduced it, a brief, very brief summary, priority, who's working on it, and then its current status. Although I did not update it this morning, so it may be just a little out of sync. Senate Bill 281, as we know, is a bill that adds PTSD to the list of qualifying conditions, and at this point is the only bill that is currently moving through the committees. It was referred back to the President's desk from the Health and Human Services Committee week before last with a due pass recommendation, with Senator Cruz the only dissenting vote, in the hopes of sending the Judiciary Committee, where it is going next, a message. The President has not yet referred it, but I expect it to be referred to Senator Krasansky's committee in the next day or two. There's indications that it will come out of the Senate Judiciary with another due pass recommendation, and then go to the floor of the Senate. And we are right now counting votes, and as you can see, I have indicated we've got 8 confirmed and as many as 6 probables, leaving us too short being able to get it to the House. So we're guardedly optimistic at this point. I just spoke with one of our activists that's been there, and has indicated that the Democratic members, at least on the Judiciary Committee, are supporting it and will vote to move it forward. On this report that I put together, I didn't include all the bills that I listed in the chart, because some of them they're just not going to go anywhere. House Bill 2052, which had a hearing and got a due pass recommendation from House Judiciary, is a bill that raises a fee for the marijuana diversion program assessments that are typically done by the state agency, but there are private companies involved, private, rehab clinics and things of that nature that do the assessment. And it felt for too many years they've been kind of carrying that part of the assessment. They only get $90 to do it. This bill proposes to triple it, take it to $275 for that assessment. That, coupled with the $335 that you have to pay to the court, puts the out-of-pocket expenses for that particular program at $710. And I personally think that's a little bit too much. And although I have heard it probably won't get out of Ways and Means where it has been referred. House Bill 2919 is the regulated supply bill introduced by Representative Buckley at the request of Troy Harrison. Have I got that right, Todd? Is that correct? Morris, I'm sorry. It'll probably get a hearing, but I'm not sure it's going to go anywhere. House Bill 3371 is our first legalization bill in, as far as I know, in our history. And it sets up tax and regulate, and I think we'll see a hearing on this. How much further it goes than that, I don't know at this point. But I do know that there's not much will to jump into the legalization fray right now, because Washington and Colorado just haven't shaken out well enough for them to be able to formulate a program, Oregon specific, that will stand the test that everybody's going to come up against with the feds. So I know there's a pretty well-funded and pretty well-organized group that's working on the legalization efforts, and I know that they're in the process right now of drafting several ballot measure titles to submit to the Secretary of State. And once the ballot title is actually granted, then they will start polling on those, and we'll pick the one that polls best to actually run as an initiative, and with the hopes that it is well enough crafted that the legislature next session, as they've indicated a willingness to do, to introduce it excuse me, as a referral bill to the 2014 ballot. As I noted here, a number of groups that are really interested in seeing this happen, and just kind of feel that it's inevitable, whether the legislature does it or not. There's enough movement out there and enough support that an initiative will eventually pass within the next 2 to 4 years. House Bill 2204 is a bill that was introduced at the request of Clackamas County District Attorney John Foote, that realigns the crimes and penalties for manufacture, distribution, and possession of controlled substances. It is the same wording. The wording of that bill is also incorporated in 3195, and 3194 not quite as broadly added to that language. 3194 and 3195 are the Governor's Commission on Public Safety bills that were introduced, and the thrust of their bills is to reduce prison population and the cost to the state, and to try and get a handle on some of the exploding budget numbers that they're confronted with. Right now we have 15 prisons in the state of Oregon, and that it costs a lot of money to keep them going, and so in order to try and reduce that population, they're restructuring the fines and penalties for especially marijuana. Although we're not happy with the way they've done it, that's their efforts to reduce that budgetary impact. With this, Lee Berger, an attorney from Portland and former member of the committee, and I have been working on language that will take the current situation where possession of less than an ounce is a violation, anything more than that's a Class B felony. Senate Bill 40, which I touch on a little bit later, is a bill introduced by the Oregon Criminal Defense Lawyers Association to realign the penalties for manufacture, possession, and distribution in line with the change in scheduling of marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2. So it'll take, instead of it being a Class B felony, they will drop the Class C felony, and that's all in line with what the law requires. We're not sure where it's going to go or quite how it's going to happen, but we feel optimistic that we're going to be able to change that this session, so that if you're caught with an ounce and a gram, it's not a felony anymore. The talk right now is that the violation category will go to 2 ounces instead of just 1 ounce, and that the break between misdemeanor and felony will be at 4 ounces. So between 2 and 4 ounces of Class A misdemeanor, and then everything over 4 ounces would be a Class C felony. We're just kind of knocking on wood, keeping our fingers crossed and treading lightly because it's an issue that everybody realizes. The talk around the Capitol is everybody realizes that this is something that needs fixed. And what we end up with, I'm not sure, but there will be some graduation between violation and felony. House Bill 3055. This is the one that reduces the number of cards allowed in any residence to 3 instead of 4. And it also adds a requirement that any background checks will be paid for by the applicant.
Where'd that one come from, Anthony?
What's it say here? 55. Committee on Judiciary, interim committee on Judiciary in the House. And I'm not sure who sparked it, but that's where it's coming from. And, you know, there's always been concern about card stacking and, you know, the abuse of people that are growing for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 patients, and that's a kind of a way to get a handle on that. But the real thing, you know, one of the parts of that bill is that anybody that has a background check, which is what the growers, people that are, you know, providing a growth site, they have to have a background check, and they want you to pay for it. So.
And we know that about half of our patients say they're their own grower, and many of those don't grow. Huge.
Huge. No, that's a different bill. Okay, so the next one on the list here is Senate Bill 794. I know I've heard some people talking today about this bill. It's the bill that Lelandberger and I had Senator Krzansky drop as a placeholder because we had run up against a deadline and had not gotten the broad-based language for a dispensary system in the state of Oregon hammered out yet, and so this was put in place in order to allow us to do that. It's also a place that the ACMM could submit some ideas for structural changes of the program. I mean, I know that ACMM can't do that, but it's a place where, you know, a well-organized effort might be able to get language into that bill that makes some of the changes that everybody's worried about, like legislative advisory capacity, reciprocity, some of these other issues. It's sitting there right now when we're still just kind of kicking it around. Senate Bill 40 I touched on earlier, and that will move. That's a housekeeping bill that will move through. Whether or not it ends up with misdemeanor possession changes, I don't know. But Senator Krzansky and Senator Cruz were discussing it in committee during the work session or the public hearing on that bill. So we're all just kind of waiting to see what's going to go on. House Bill 3140 requires birthing centers with more than 200 live births per year to start screening all new births for controlled substances. I just don't care much for that bill, and I just think we should oppose it. I mean, it's pretty obvious, I think, that if a mother comes in that's suffering from serious substance abuse problems, it's going to be evident, and somebody's going to be talking to somebody about what they're seeing. So
It's also a bit too late.
Yep.
It's also an unfunded mandate.
So in my final notes, I know that Jeff Sugarman and the Sugarman Group have been working on language for a very narrowly constructed way to deal with dispensaries, and the upshot of it all is that they're going to, you know, try and add another level of cards or another permit set up within the program to make that change. And in fact, I got a text earlier this morning of a copy of the legislative concept draft that was made available to me, and it is very narrowly defined. It adds, it just sets up a new category in there, and it doesn't do anything else to own. It doesn't mess with plants, plant size, plant maturity. It doesn't mess with the amount you can grow or possess, and we'll see where it goes. It hasn't been dropped yet, but with the Sugarman's Group, Sugarman Group's resources and capabilities, I think once it gets dropped, we may see it moving forward. So I guess finally, I anticipate PTSD getting through the legislature this session. It's going to be tricky and it's going to be close, but I think we're going to be successful at it. And I feel the same way about misdemeanor possession. One thing I would say about misdemeanor possession is it creates everything below a kilo is a category 4 in the sentencing grid, which is down there quite a ways. So that's good, but the downside is that once you start getting up into the higher amounts, like the upper limit actually is 50 kilos. But the problem is it's a category 10, which equates it with murder and all that kind of stuff. So Lee and I are working to hopefully kind of bring that into line. So that's really about all I have for you folks right now. I know it's always interesting to see what's going to come out of the legislature in any given session, but we are further along in this session than we ever have been, and I think that's a good sign, and I am, well, as I said, guardedly optimistic that we're going to get a couple of changes this year that will help the patients and the program.
So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And before we adjourn, I just want to thank Stormy Ray and Dr. Ellen Cohen for your years of service to the ACMM and to the patients in general. Been very dedicated to making those trips across the state. And thank you so much.
Hear, hear.
All right, well, with no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you for watching. You want to say anything before I turn it off, Glenn?
Yes, good night.
Good night. God bless you all, every single one of you.